Thank you, sensei. They quickly exchanged bows and went their separate ways again. Self-sufficiency was good. It seemed 1A had at least 2 competent students since Ojiro seemed to have some martial arts background. Midoriya made a beeline for the closest wild pussycat who wasn't busy, who, to no one's surprise, was Mandalay again. It seemed the other pussycats had come back sometime during the night or this morning, judging by Tiger who was currently beating the shit out of the physical students, but Tiger was the only one Midoriya could find. There were 4 wild pussycats in total. Mandalay, Pixie bitch can't use her goddamn eyes, Tiger, and the currently missing Ragdoll. They wanted to find out about the lay of the land, so any of them would do, but technically Pixie would be the best. The problem is Wraith wanted to punt her off a cliff and see how well she took the fall, so he'd avoid her if possible and instead go to Mandalay. Excuse me, miss, I just had a question about the local area. Do you have any large waterfalls on this property? It really was a shot in the dark, but he didn't want to talk to Pixie Bob. He didn't say it, but falling from that kind of height hurt, damn it. She had been reckless and a pain in his ass, and with her eccentric behavior around kids last night he wanted to give her a wide berth. Waterfalls. We're in the mountains, Ken. I don't think we have any waterfalls large or small on our property. Damn, worth a shot. We do have a river if you're just looking for running water. And so the plan changed. Is it a strong and or deep river? It went above my waist when I went in, and it's strong enough I can't leave Koda in there unsupervised. That would be good enough for a bad plan. Could you lead me to it in a minute? I need to get some students first. Quote. Yes. What do you need to do at a stream? Midoriya left as soon as she said yes, but he did hear her mumbling. Personally, he'd have preferred to do this whole training camp at a beach, but he'd take what he could get. If all he could get was a stream, he'd take it. Kirishima, Kaminari, you don't mind getting soaked, do you? Midoriya let himself peter off as he came back to the tree line, watching Kirishima chase Kaminari around while Kaminari took the occasional pot shot at Kirishima with his sword before running again. Ahem. He walked between the duo before they could continue to run in circles and spoke again. I hope your training went well so far. Yes sir, I'm 17 hits in. Kaminari spoke with a fun smile. I've blocked 17 hits so far, haven't hit yet. Kirishima was obviously not enjoying this as much, but that's because he wasn't doing well. Well, we'll see that you hit something before lunch. We're going to a river, are both of you comfortable getting wet with what you're wearing? Midoriya gestured vaguely to their entire bodies while picking up his bags. Both looked themselves over and nodded, smiling. Yes sir. Good, follow me. Midoriya led his 2 students across the field to Mandalay, admiring just how much walking and talking he had to do just to take care of 4 kids if you counted Zero and Ojiro. This was ridiculous, he walked the length of this training place like 5 times. But nobody other than him cared about stuff like that, leaving him to silently stew over his minor gripes as the group made their way back over to Mandalay. We're ready if you were miss. Alright, follow closely and try to keep pace. I've told the others where we're going just in case. Mandalay led the way through the woods, driving a quick pace through the thickets and underbrush. The one who had the hardest time staying with the group was, to nobody's surprise, the guy carrying 2 large bags. Midoriya quickly shifted to the back of the group and kept hustling harder than anyone else just to not get lost in this mess. Only took a few minutes before they made it to a large. Well, they made it to a river. About 12 feet across where they reached it, with a depth of at least 2 feet. It wasn't much, but it was all he could ask for. Thank you, miss. If you need us, we'll probably be here until lunch. Do you want me to stay and help? I can just tell the others I'm not coming back immediately. No, your services won't be required, thank you. A rescue hero probably could be useful if things went bad, but the weakling made sure they carried medical supplies everywhere. Besides, she was trained to be a hero under modern heroism principles. She'd just get in the way since the weakling already was ready to help when things went wrong. It was reminded of their little debate at the thought. Their debate was idiotic, a veil of logic that tried to cover the truth. The weakling's indecision was the problem, but one side was clear for them. The answer was obvious, only one side could achieve what they really wanted. The weakling didn't seem to know it yet, but Wraith did, and he'd see them through no matter what he had to do. Was she still talking? But if you're sure, you kids stay safe, alright. Yes your eyes, ma'am. Yes, miss. Yep. Kaminari kept on swinging before he settled on something he liked while Midoriya scouted along the river, checking the depth with a training stick. Don't worry, sensei's really good at teaching even if it doesn't make sense. He taught me how to do this running thing by making me walk across the room a lot. Alright, if you're sure. And with another one of Kaminari's god-awful explanations, Mandalay left 2 kids with a mysterious old man she knew next to nothing about. He was supposed to be a teacher Nezu picked, but Nezu picked all his teachers and every one of them was god-awful at their job. Seriously, Midnight taught the history of heroics. Just because she was one of the biggest mistakes of heroics didn't mean she should be teaching students about them. But he was ranting again, and he wasn't here to rant. Kirishima, Kaminari, I'm gonna need you 2 to have another training fight, but in the water this time. Can you do that? Sure, but do we really need to be in the water? Yupo, make sure you're up to your thighs in water. This should make sense in about 30 seconds. I think I've said that before. Midoriya chose a spot on the bank to sit on and kick back, enjoying the life of a vague and lazy teacher that the UA teachers seemed to constantly exist in. Go get M. The mom sat back on the banks of the river with both his large bags, watching over them. Go get M. Alright, same rules as last time. Just fight for a minute. Kirishima started to take off his shoes, placing them next to the man's bags. Fine with me dude. Kaminari laughed, putting a hand on that sword on his hip while he kicked off his shoes. About 10 minutes ago Kirishima had thought it was just for decoration with how little his classmate used it. It was a part of his hero outfit, sure, but he always kept it sheathed. He instead just ran around with it and whacked robots instead of electrocuting them, which didn't seem much different at the time. But then Kirishima had gotten to fight with him, and it had been a while since he'd seen Kaminari actually fight humans. Kaminari had lost his first round in the sports festival because he got grabbed by vines before he could do anything. A pretty lame way to lose, but he at least tried. Then, like 10ish minutes ago, he fought Kirishima. Kaminari's style had, from the outside, gotten way worse when he picked up the sword. He couldn't take down robots in one hit anymore. But on the inside, his style had changed enough that he could run literal circles around Kirishima without ever getting hit. Take all the time you want, you two. The mom adjusted his position as he lay in the grass on one of the banks in the shade, creeping up a little bit and resting his head against the trunk of a tree. I'd rather you did something correctly once than quickly fix it. Gotcha. Kaminari laughed again, showing signs of newfound confidence before turning back to Kirishima. Ya ready? He didn't think Kaminari had been unconfident. Yeah, that was the word. Kaminari hadn't been unconfident before, but it seemed that in just one day of being here his confidence had steadily grown. Yeah, let's do this. Kirishima smiled as he slammed his fists together, walking into the water with Kaminari. Cold. What did you two expect, hot springs? The man who relaxed about 10 feet away laughed. Start the fight when you're both up to your thighs in water, and don't come out of the water. If you get stuck or start to drown, stick an arm straight out. I'll pull you out. Yes sir. Both slowly moved into the water, with Kirishima taking a deep breath and talking himself through it. Think of just like an endurance challenge, it is. Huh. You're right, this is gonna be an endurance challenge. The mom glanced down from his relaxed position before he adjusted again. That water's pretty cold and fast, right? You'll get it in a minute. Good luck and don't slip. Yes sir. Kirishima refocused and pressed into the water, sucking it up and moving in. Sheesh, is this what they meant by refreshing mountain water? They meant tortoise. Fuck. This is so cold. He was at least taking it better than Kaminari, who was letting everything in his head come out. Let's hurry up and start before I freeze. Kirishima couldn't help smiling at the class clown and glanced at his legs as the water went higher and higher. Alright, I'm deep enough. You. Yay agh. Cold. Kaminari suddenly sunk up to his hips in the cold water and immediately jumped backwards before glancing down. Although. Kaminari stepped back into the hip-deep water and laughed. Ha, I'm ready now. Prepare to get whacked. Yeah, that's been my day so far, Kirishima mumbled as he hardened his hands and took a pose, waiting opposite Kaminari. And waited, then waited some more. Quote. When do we start? My nude starts at first contact. Go whenever you're ready. Alright. He turned back towards Kaminari, getting ready to charge but Kaminari was just walking around in the hip-deep water, scooting from side to side then forward and back. What are you doing? Being ready. Kaminari said that, but he wasn't attacking. He was just doing that weird scooting thing and moving in small circles. Should I be doing something else? Kirishima didn't respond and instead glanced around, confused. The birds were chirping, the bugs were buzzing, and the wind blew across the water, creating ripples as Kaminari scooted around in circles while starting to make sound effects with his mouth, all the while gripping his sword at his hip. Only the hand grip was completely out of the water as he danced in circles. Alright, then I'll go first Kirishima moved to charge in, hardening his body, but instead of rushing forward his pace was a slow trudge towards Kaminari. Ha, gotcha now wah. Kaminari also lunged forward, creating a huge splash, but he also wasn't moving as fast as usual. In their last match, Kaminari's speed had been dizzying, but now he was even slower than Kirishima because, oh fuck, the water. Fuck. Kirishima continued to force himself forward while his arms remained hardened, using all those muscles he built to power through and get close to Kaminari. In return, Kaminari took one step backward, but he lacked Kirishima's muscle. He was slower in these waters, and was a sitting duck for Kirishima. This motivated Kirishima to push forward faster, making an irregular charge that sloshed around as he was pushed downriver, making his approach even faster compared to Kaminari's attempts to move forward. Kaminari couldn't outpace him by going backward, so once you're in my range, I've got you. Whack. First hit goes to me. Start the timer sensei. Kaminari drew his sword and once again started this fight the same way he started the last one, by drawing his sword and hitting Kirishima in the face when he charged. Now Kaminari retreated in earnest, still moving slower than Kirishima but now they were a little closer. Kirishima powered through the hit easily, he had hardened his head the second he saw Kaminari started to pull the sword out. The sword didn't have an edge so it wasn't lethal, but Kirishima wasn't interested in breaking his skull today. He continued to advance steadily, taking step after step while Kaminari hit him with constant sword swipes. They weren't heavy, but as they constantly annoyed him as he approached. Sploosh tilde. Sea cold. Kirishima suddenly sunk up to his hips in the water, threw off his rhythm as he adjusted to the new ground. It was slippery, and he hadn't been ready for the sudden terrain switch. Whack. Cur tilde ploosh. Kaminari stepped forward the same instant Kirishima entered the deeper water, taking advantage of Kirishima's confusion to thrust the dull blade straight into Kirishima's hardened chest. The sudden impact of the stab along with the shift in terrain sent Kirishima toppling backwards into and under the water. The world was a sudden burst of bubbles as water rushed past him, but Kirishima didn't stay down for long. He immediately pushed himself up as quickly as possible, surfacing and taking a breath in. Bonk tilde. To get tapped upside the head by Kaminari. The hit had no force behind it but he still immediately hardened his body, right as a real hit came crashing into his skull for real. He was thrown back under and rolled under the water, bumping along before getting his feet back under him. He kept his entire body hardened as he rose out of the water, sopping wet, and shook his head. Hey, surprise attacks aren't manly. But they do make me win tilde. Kaminari was now rushing towards him. Kaminari had the water pushing him forward this time, giving him the speed advantage against Kirishima, plus he was already moving. Kaminari rushed forward with his sword sheathed, laughing as he whispered something. Thunder breathing revised, second form. What? Splash tilde. Rainy day. Kaminari suddenly splashed water in Kirishima's eyes, making him instinctually take another step back as he covered his eyes. He couldn't see where Kaminari was. And I gotcha tilde. From his right side the voice came, making him turn straight into the next attack. Instead of hitting him in the head this time though, he blocked the sword strike with his forearm. Not this time. Kirishima now advanced on Kaminari, holding his arms up to block his head as Kaminari retreated while constantly throwing out weak but wild attacks. Kaminari continued to rain down attacks, but Kirishima smiled as he endured and plowed through. I get it, you're really fast, but you've got no speed now. That's why we're in a river. Kaminari moved sideways to try and get the water flow to help him, Kirishima could do that too. They both stepped sideways as Kirishima advanced, protecting against an onslaught of weak attacks that forced him to keep his guard up. Kirishima peeked past his hands, constantly minding the distance. The sword came down over and over, but it had a clear rhythm to it. Both of us only know one attack, but this time mine's at an advantage. Kirishima waited for the sword right as it swung down again to release his guard, throwing one of his hands to the side and knocking Kaminari's sword out of the way. Kaminari tried to step back, but he was too slow as Kirishima stepped in and threw his first hook. His unhardened hand slipped under Kaminari's arms and socked him center mass, forcing him back one step. Kaminari played into this step back, going even further back and trying to counter swing and hit Kirishima back, but they were too close as Kirishima kept pace and delivered a second hook to Kaminari's body. This time, Kaminari's legs bent as he stumbled backward, weakling attacking Kirishima as he fell backward. But Kirishima had already hardened his body in response and took the hit, throwing his own counter and hooking Kaminari again in the stomach. "And you're done. Kirishima, you won." A voice interrupted their match as Kirishima finally got the advantage and landed his first few hits all day. Kirishima smiled as he glanced at the man on the riverbank, who was now standing and clapping. "A good match on all fronts." "Yeah." Kirishima nodded, then turned to Kaminari who was still catching his breath. "Nice going, man, you really threw me for a loop at the start." "Says you, I was freezing my balls off and then I nearly slipped. I just figured I'd try to get you to do the same thing and start whacking you. Before you two have some sort of rival bonding experience, I'd like you to stop in place and answer me a question." The mom interrupted their bro moment from the shoreline, turning away and going to the drink bag. Why did Kirishima win this match? Now that he thought about it, it didn't really make sense that he won. Kaminari hit him way more times than he hit Kaminari. He'd gone under the water twice too and had a really bad start. Cause my hits did more damage. Nope. Good guess though and solid point. Oh, cause he blocked my attack. Very similar to Kirishima's answer, Kaminari, but no. Remember the rules of this fight and look down. Both looked into the water, confused for a second and clearly not getting what the old man was talking about. Repeat the rules to me while staring down, you'll get it. 1 minute after the first hit, stay in the water, I get it. Kirishima figured it out first, then checked his own legs to his theory. Stay thigh deep in the water. Kaminari, who had been retreating, had ended up only knee deep in the water. He took a second to figure it out, and then it clicked. Ooh, I getcha. In a video game, I would have just fallen into a death pit. More likely you would have walked right off a building or into a wall, but the principle stands, yes. You can stop standing in there. I brought towels but we'll be getting in again soon. The mom held up said towels and sat back down. Although, in this heat, you'll probably be dry in a few minutes just from standing around. Come on now. The two students trudged back over, both now thoroughly soaked. Even though only one of them went under, both were practically covered from head to toe in the river's water somehow, which was impressive. Alrighty, I'm going to ask each of you a few questions and we'll get into the training seriously. Kaminari, you're up first. What do you think was the point of that little test? Quote. Speed. Midoriya thought about it and nodded, but he didn't speak. Kaminari picked it up and elaborated. I couldn't move how I wanted in the water, so I couldn't do the usual hit and run stuff. Plus my footwork was way worse and I kept slipping. Yup, I was pretty sure I gave you a bad explanation of how running and fighting mix together, so I devised this. How are you feeling? Ribs hurt, but I'm still walking. He didn't hit me that hard. Kaminari laughed for a second then rubbed his side. Might get a few bruises though. Beating people into submission isn't sunshine and rainbows, I'm afraid. If it was, their job would be quite easy. I hope you notice the speed difference between you two, so I want you to do some basic training with your new stance. I want you to practice moving around in it while being in the water. Should help you build up stronger legs. In theory, they really didn't have time to test this out. This was a whole lot of winning and guessing right now, and that wasn't what Wraith liked. Go between those two trees 100 times, and if you need anything, I'll be here. Do I need the sword out? Yep, you need to get used to holding it in that position. I'll take your real sword and sheath, wouldn't want the sword to get rusty or the sheath to jam up. The electronics in here might not like this river. Oh yeah, there are electronics in this thing. Kaminari began to try and untie it, but the strings used to tie the sheath to his belt had started to swell up as they absorbed water. Quote. I'll just get it off. In a sec. Midoriya nodded to Kaminari and turned to Kirishima. Forgive my rudeness, but are you alright? Any injuries? Nah, just got dunked a couple of times, I'm fine. Kirishima wasn't likely to get injuries from something like this, but it was better to be careful over nothing than careless about everything. Alright, and did you learn anything from the test? Yeah, sort of. I do best in a head-on fight. Kirishima's manly spirit seemed to swell up, but he was missing the point. Quote. Yes, right now, you do best in head-on confrontations. Wraith shook his head as he gazed out into the river, staring straight past the child struggling to undo a knot. And that is the problem. Chapter end notes. Yo yigati yo. This chapter got cut short so I could put Wraith finally getting some of his anger out at UA in the next chapter. But I'll explain that at the end, so let's take this mistake one step at a time. First things first, I wanted to address what we didn't see. Kaminari's fighting. Some people have, for a long time, thought that Kaminari was going to wow the class with his spectacular ability and become a new member of the top 3. There are a few problems with this, and the first one is the same problem Kirishima has. Kaminari only knows one real move. I say one real move, but I mean is all his attacks in this version are variations on the same attack. In other words, all of his moves share a similar weakness. This, as we're going to dive into in the next chapter, isn't good, and Kaminari's going to acquire some new moves at this summer camp to fix this. Second problem, Kaminari isn't that strong overall. Kaminari doesn't seriously work out as the other melee heroes do, and his main method of attack in canon to take down his problems is to take himself out with them. While he's no longer a liability, he is severely lacking stopping power. For example, Kaminari can take full power swings at Kirishima's face and do jack shit, cause he doesn't have the muscle yet. This is a problem solved with time and by Kaminari gaming less. Third problem, Kaminari doesn't use his quirk at all with sword fighting. For him they're entirely separate. He has not once electrocuted his sword because he entirely forgot he could do that since it was only mentioned once, and this will be addressed in the camp. Fourth problem, Kaminari. I'm gonna be as blunt as Wraith, Kaminari doesn't think things through very well. He's been messing himself up and hasn't been doing so hot recently, especially because he lacks the power to take down robots easily with his new fighting style. Kaminari used to be able to one-shot robots and now he can't, therefore, everyone thinks he's weaker. Hope that makes sense. Lastly, UA Kaminari has been stuck up against robots who are tougher than humans and can't get concussions, so he doesn't look that impressive. He's kind of shit right now in robot versus human matchups, and if you look at what Kaminari thought their final exam was going to be fighting a bunch of robots, I'd say you could reasonably guess that 1A fights a lot of robots. This and the last problem are things he can't overcome, they're just obstacles he has to get over. All in all, Kaminari doesn't look that good so far to his other classmates. He actually looks like he got weaker since he started using the sword because he can't take down enemies as quickly, but he isn't as much of a problem to be around after a fight. Midoriya's going to try to change that. Before the river fight, I'll admit I wanted to show the first fight between Kaminari and Kirishima, but I just didn't have the time. Some things need to be cut out for flow and that was one of them. Now, the river fight. Fun to write might be hard to understand. I'll try to read it a couple of times and make it flow good, hey, but I didn't want it to be a stomp. Kaminari might be overall better than Kirishima right now, but Kaminari's not that hot either. It took him like 100 tries just to hit Midoriya once, and he could move way faster than Midoriya could in that fight. Kaminari's big advantage so far is speed, but take that away and he's not doing so hot. Still, Kirishima has his own weaknesses, namely a lack of variety and reach. As long as Kaminari had that sword, he could hit Kirishima without worrying about being hit back, until Kirishima just sort of crushed him by getting too close. Was a fun chaotic mess that brought me back to the early chapters. Well, I had more notes but I'm running out of words so that also got cut off and put in the next chapter. Man, this chapter is just getting robbed by the next chapter. Can't have shit in Detriot. Chapter 125. Chapter Summary. Midoriya and Kirishima sit down and finally discuss fighting. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Kaminari trudged the river in front of them as they spoke now, as Wraith spoke, offering its insight as politely as it could to Kirishima. Quote. I believe you should switch your quirk training, at least for today, to technical training. I won't force you, and if you really want I can think of some useful way for you to train your quirk, but I believe you'd benefit much more from learning new techniques than from continuing to strengthen your quirk. Quote. Man, I get to choose. You really aren't a part of UA, you sound like you actually care about us. Kirishima laughed at it like it was a joke, but this was no laughing matter for the weakling so it was no laughing matter for Wraith. I care an awful lot about the future of this country, Kirishima, and that does concern you as a part of the future of heroism. Wraith didn't even stutter over his words as he watched Kaminari finally hit the other side and start slowly making his way back. And yes, you do get a choice. We all have a choice, and even if you chose nothing you've still made a choice. That's kind of deep for a training camp. That's not a response to the question. Would you like to work on your techniques today? You can switch back if you don't like it. Switch like tomorrow or switch like the second I don't like it. The very instant. This camp is designed for your growth, and it's supposed to be tailored to you. Your opinion matter on this issue. You make it sound so good to learn techniques, and I'm all the way out here. Guess I could do that. But do you want to? Wraith raised an eyebrow as he spoke, and Kirishima froze for a moment, then too. Sounded like you were gonna elaborate on that, sir. And it sounded like you were about to make a decision instead of going with the flow, but we've both been mistaken so far. Wraith once again threw the ball to Kirishima, wondering what the aspiring professional would do. He seemed, like his fighting style, to be incapable of taking control and instead just went with whatever was happening. He talked a big game, but when the chips were down, talking didn't do much, and Wraith would rather focus entirely on one good student than spread it out between one who wanted to be there and one who just showed up. The blockhead didn't seem to know how to respond when given a choice, pausing and trying to think this through. Wraith had no problem teaching two students, but like he said, he wanted them to actually want to learn. Enthusiasm was a key ingredient in learning and if you didn't have it you were going to have a rough time, which was probably why the weakling could never quite get into art. I think I want to try what you said. Sir. He did form an answer in the end, but it was as solid and stable as jello in an oven. Wraith's gaze switched from Kaminari to Kirishima, still with one eyebrow raised and unsure how much they were going to get out of this mess. Very well, let's get started then, you've been stuck standing for long enough. Midoriya led him down the river, glancing at each tree they passed all while talking. You currently fight mainly with hooks. Do you know any other punches, Kirishima? No, sir. Figures. We're about to fix that. You know the problem with the hook? Not, really, sir. It seems someone was probably in something military with all the sirs he kept getting was going to drive him nuts. It's got no range. You've already got no long-range attacks, and you chose one of the only attacks in hand-to-hand combat with no range. If you get in a fight with an opponent who wants to keep you away from them, you've got to keep trying to get in close to them while they can attack. All right, you're not getting any of this, are you? If we're being honest, not really, sir. Sorry. Fine, a demonstration then. Do a hook but just leave your hand in the air. Midoriya turned and faced Kirishima as he performed his hook. It was a really nice hook, with a good step in as Kirishima leaned forward, twisting his body over his hips and put his shoulder into it, getting a nice clean sound as it cut through the air. His hand stopped mid-air, about 2 feet from his body. For Midoriya who didn't really study fisticuffs combat beyond the basics, it looked pretty good. Still, he at least learned the basics of all variety of punches just in case he needed to. Like right now. Wraith stepped in and twisted his body too, firing off a punch straight down the middle and stopping just shy of Kirishima's chin. Wraith's arm straightened out as it approached and twisted, putting his shoulder into the punch for a little extra power. It happened so fast Kirishima stumbled back a bit. Oh, sorry, should have said something. See the difference in reach? Kirishima had led with a right hook while Midoriya countered with a left jab, keeping both punches on the same side of their bodies for easier comparison. Just looking between the two arms, it was obvious that Kirishima's arms were longer than Midoriya's. Yet, somehow, there was over a foot between Kirishima's fist and Midoriya while Midoriya could reach up and touch Kirishima's face if he wanted to. At this range, I can hit you before you hit me, and if you try to advance into your range I can punish you for trying to pass through my range. Midoriya's arm relaxed as he let the tension out of it, stepping back out of the punch. Believe it or not, that's not good for you, even with your defense. So, you're gonna teach me that punch? I'm gonna show you something. Whether you learn that punch or not is another choice you've got to make. Midoriya glanced around again and settled on the best-looking tree, or at least, the best he was gonna get without searching hard. He wanted to get Kirishima started on this. Watch this, then try it yourself, alright. I'ma throw a few for you. Midoriya stretched his left as he walked over the selected tree, a relatively small one with small leaves. He didn't have a clue what type of tree it was, but right now it was his newest training tool and he intended to get as much out of it as he could. He faced away from the tree trunk before suddenly jutting backward into it, shaking the tree and sending a flurry of leaves falling down. Kirishima stared in confusion as Midoriya finished stretching his left and took position. This was very similar to sword fighting, with one leg forward and elbows by the body. His fists rose up to his cheekbones as he stared forward, dead silent as he concentrated at the first of the small leaves flitted down past his eyes. Sir, what's FWP, FWP. His left hand suddenly snapped forward and back in under a second, then again and again as his left became a blur of motion. For 5 seconds, his left seemed to never stop moving as it cut through the air sharply. And, then, the 6th second arrived and Midoriya stood up fully, shaking his left arm. Something like that, anyway. I have no idea what you did. Weren't you gonna teach me how to punch? Kirishima was confused, not really grasping the principle behind the exercise, so Midoriya elaborated a little. You're gonna catch leaves first. I'm not gonna teach you to punch for fun, after all, I'm training you. This'll make sense. Eventually. Probably. Midoriya walked up to Kirishima and offered his left, still clenched. Kirishima looked between the Midoriya's face and his hand, very confused. Midoriya opened his hand, showing Kirishima what was in his left. 9 small leaves were resting inside of his palm. How'd you? The big thing with the jab isn't power, it's speed. You're just starting out, so I want 4 leaves in 5 seconds before I'm gonna teach you another punch. Makes sense. I get it, I get it. Sheesh, not even half the leaves you got. Kirishima took his place in front of the tree, then slammed his body into it, creating another flurry of falling leaves. Midoriya sat back and watched this first run, with Kirishima rushing in before he even explained how to do a jab. This was going to be an interesting control test, at least. Kirishima put his arms up to his shoulders and had the good sense not to try hardening his body at least. All his muscles were tense as his eyes flicked for targets before going for the first leaf he saw falling in front of him. He lunged forward with his entire body, his arms swerving in from the side like a hook and missing the first leaf entirely, blowing it up higher by missing it. He quickly went for another swing with the same arm, not even fully pulling it back as he grabbed the leaf out of the air and dragged it back to his body. Got one, and now. He went for another one with the same hand, swerving up from the bottom as he went for one at waist height. He grabbed it on the first tree and lost his first leaf in the process. What? He went for a third and fourth, but each wild swing of his arm made him drop the leaf he was already holding. The tree stopped dropping leaves before he could manage to get 2 leaves in his hand at once, well over the 5-second time limit. What the heck? You made this look so easy. Yes, but I knew what I was doing. Somebody once said you could tell everything about a person from how they fought, and while Midoriya usually thought that was pretty dumb, he was starting to understand. Kirishima seemed to fight with his natural style, ignoring everything and rushing for whatever he wanted without thinking it through. Maybe quirk personality wasn't complete bullshit after all. But you at least gotta leave, so you've got enough precision to do this. You're just starting out after all, and this is the first obstacle. Yeah, don't worry, giving up on the first problem isn't manly at all. Kirishima smiled, motivating himself to learn and summoning that enthusiasm Wraith spoke of earlier. Show me what you've got, teach. You know, for teaching me punching, there's not a lot of punching in this. Yup, move your front foot a little more to the side. Midoriya walked in circles around Kirishima, inspecting his legs. Bend your legs. I get that you're as punchable as a speed bag, but at least try to avoid some hits. Kirishima stood in between the trees with a wide stance, crouching a little bit and utterly confused again. What am I actually doing? Getting a real stance. Right now, you fight however you were standing, and I'm gonna change that, but one step at a time. We've got to build a foundation. Can't build a house until you make a floor plan, lean forward at the hips, kind of like you're bowing. Midoriya demonstrated as he talked, then stepped back and looked at his notes on this. He made notes about a ton of fighting styles over the years, but until a year ago they were never that detailed. Only when he became a vigilante did he really start to understand how similar and how different fighting styles could be. Like this. The standing stance for boxing was basically the same as swordsmanship. Kirishima stood with one foot in front of the other, and the back foot slightly facing the side. The big difference though was that Kirishima wasn't sideways at all, and his stance was much wider than a swordsmanship stance. Am I bending my legs so I don't fall on my face from leaning forward? Somewhat. When you start getting punched you'll be really grateful for that lean in those legs. Go to a standing position then resume this stance. Midoriya flipped through his notes on the best punching heroes he could find, but not a lot of heroes used real boxing. There was a lot of flailing fists and screaming in the hero world, but good technique was almost as rare as real heroes these days. Remember the lead leg good. Good squat, good lean. Now, again. Midoriya critiqued Kirishima's lead leg placement and then everything fell into place, giving Midoriya a shred of hope that this wouldn't be entirely terrible. They went over this over and over until Kirishima managed 10 perfect stances in a row, finally adding the upper body to this mess. Alright Kirishima, we're finally going to do something with your hands. Punch. Keep dreaming. You can't build a house until you put in the supports, Kirishima. Everything's one step at a time. Midoriya finished reading his notes and trying to figure out how he was supposed to teach boxing when he wasn't even that good himself by just reading his notes and going for the verbatim route, which is also why the startup was so slow. Push your shoulders forward, like you're reaching forward. Midoriya took a step back to avoid Kirishima's arms as he suddenly reached forward with both arms. Push them out a little forward, like you're reaching for something just out of reach. There we go. Shoulders done. Next, keep your shoulders in the same place while lowering your arms. Press your arms down so they're laying flat on your ribs for defense. I don't need to defend, my quirk covers that. Pipe. Yes, and this will help you defend. Isn't that why you were working on your quirk, to get better at defending? Makes sense. Alright, can you repeat what you said? Keep your shoulders forward while lowering your arms. Put those arms to your ribs. Wraith reminded him while rolling his eyes. This wasn't rocket science for God's sake, it was not getting the shit kicked out of you in a fight. For as Kirishima's quirk was, there were still people who could overwhelm it, and right now he wasn't at all ready for that. This looks kind of dumb, Kirishima said with his shoulders arched forward like he was making a hunchback joke, while his hands dangled in front of his thighs pointlessly. Why am I protecting my legs with my hands? Because we're not finished yet. Curl your arms up and keep the palms facing you so your arms come together like this. Midoriya pressed his biceps against his ribs, putting his elbows together at the bottom of his ribs and raising his arms up so they protected the center of his body. His closed hands came up to his nose so only his eyes peeked over the top. This protected all of your upper body from attacks directly in front of you. Close your hands so you can see me, Kirishima. Kirishima now stood with his entire upper body hidden behind his arms, with his eyes barely peeking over the top as he clenched his hands. Like this. Sort of. Don't bother to clench your fists, that's a waste of energy. Just keep them closed so they're out of the way. Tensed muscles actually move slower, so it's best to stay a little relaxed. Midoriya inspected Kirishima's defense, looking it over from all sides. Get your shoulders forward again. Good. Now, again. Kirishima took a while to get used to actually doing something with his arms and took even longer to get used to putting together the two halves he learned. He took so long that Kaminari finished his own training before Kirishima did, and Midoriya finally got to teach a subject he actually knew things about. First, draw. Second, stance. Excellent. Midoriya had to quickly get to the point with Kaminari so he could get back to fixing the mess that was Kirishima's fighting, which was bad because Kaminari also had a lot to work on. Kaminari was at least a lot better off overall compared to the catastrophe Kirishima called his style, but he still had stuff he needed to work on, and Midoriya didn't have the time of day to do both. If he could be in two places at once, this whole mess would be easier, but he couldn't. Perhaps these limits were why UA was such a mess. UA was both paid to do this and had more teachers, plus they should have already taught everyone the basics. If they couldn't, they were failing in their job as instructors, and it was pretty obvious just by Kirishima alone that UA was failing pretty bad. That was irrelevant now though. They had to double down and teach Kaminari as quickly as possible. The third part we're gonna teach you is an actual attack now, so you can fight with more than one move. A basic attack, like a light heavy combo. More like just a heavy attack than a full combo. This is a move should be very consistent and be one you can modify into other attacks. It might even feel a little familiar and help you improve the thunderclap and bolt. Midoriya picked up his wooden training sword and faced Kaminari head on as he narrated his motions. Where does the sword start? Bottom at the waist, top at the eyes. Good. Now, hands come up to the eyes. This gives you some distance so you can actually put force into the attack. Otherwise, you auto-miff. Basically, you need distance to build power, otherwise, you just wind up poking the opponent. Next, raise the lead foot. This is gonna throw you a little off balance, but we want that, alright. Sword up, foot up. Great. Now, we want to bring the sword down before the foot comes down. There shouldn't be a big gap between the two, but this will put our weight into the attack. We're literally going to fall into the attack, putting everything behind it. Sword up, sword down, foot down. Keep M in order, like a button combo. Doesn't work if you put M in the wrong order. Excellent again, Kaminari. Now, watch again, and I'm gonna go faster. Midoriya breathed in, rolling his arm, then brought his sword straight up. He lunged forward with his lead leg and quickly drove the sword down while stepping in, stopping his hands before they even got halfway down his body, stopping his sudden attack with his lead foot before quickly retreating and resuming his normal stance. Now, you try it. Kaminari nodded, then went very slowly for the first one. Hands up, hands down, foot down. Hey, how far down should my hands go? I'd say about when they pass the top of your stomach. If you swing too wide, you'll just be hitting the ground, and you can't really kill the ground. Plus, you leave yourself open. Midoriya it over, trying to get down the timing that he used by doing a quick run while specifically concentrating on when he did it. Quote. I think it's best to pull out early, but that's my style. When you start practicing against an opponent, you'll figure out your own timing. Kirishima, remember your shoulders. So I should try it out on you. Alright, give me a second. Hands, feet, hands, get. Kaminari's words became mumbles as he concentrated before performing his first swing. Remember to return to your stance after a swing. It's not just for decoration after all. And Kirishima, good work on the upper body. Keep it up. Midoriya stepped back so he could clearly see both Kirishima and Kaminari at once, making a mental note of how Kirishima was doing as well. The big problem right now was they were doing pretty different activities, so he couldn't pair them together and try to teach both at once. He had to divide up his time carefully since they wouldn't finish their activities at the same time either. Step forward, don't just raise your leg. Advance as you attack Kaminari. Good. Kaminari slowly adjusted his style, rarely going back to a former mistake if it was pointed out. He still wasn't really using his legs to attack entirely, but hey, he was just starting. The fact that this looked like an attack already was impressive. Quote. I get it. Kaminari stopped as he looked over with wide eyes. This is the same thing as thunderclap and bolt. Got it in one. You get good at this, your special attack will also improve. Ready to try it out on a target? Yes, Yuri, sir. Kaminari turned to face Midoriya already in position. Should I hit you for real? You can certainly try. I'm going to try not to get hit after all since a real opponent wouldn't. Wraith spun his sword and adopted a two-handed grip, same as Kaminari, and faced his opponent. Whenever you're ready. Kaminari didn't say anything, making minor adjustments to his stance and slowly scooting forward. His steps were small as he tried to figure out the best distance to attack from, going a little bit in every direction as he tried to get comfy. His sword suddenly rose and fell in a moment, cleaving downward as Wraith leapt back to avoid it. Kaminari continued his swing even after it missed Wraith, so Wraith jumped back forward with his own sword and brought it down quickly, tapping Kaminari in the shoulder. Hit. Oh, now I get what you said about swinging too far. It's end lag on an attack. Yes, but you get to decide how much end lag it has. The more you put into it, the more lag you get out of it, Midoriya said as he retook his position. Ready for take two? Nope. Kaminari stretched his shoulders for a second, trying to get a little more limber before something popped in his back. Alrighty, now I'm ready. They both went silent again as they faced each other. This time, Midoriya made the minor adjustments to his style as he began to slowly walk around Kaminari, forcing him to turn to face his opponent before. Kaminari jumped forward again, taking one full step before even attacking. This way he quickly closed the gap between them instead of slowly inching forward like last time. It also naturally segued into his attack as the sword rose above his head, with Wraith naturally stepping back as Kaminari dropped the sword quickly. This time he stopped extremely early as Wraith came around for the counter swing. Stopped too early, damn whoa. Kaminari nearly got knocked to the floor by the counter swing, forcing him backward suddenly. Remember your footwork. You want to take control, so advance. Midoriya didn't take full advantage of his counterattack and went back to being idle while Kaminari took charge again, getting back into position before moving forward with his attacks. Kaminari played with the timing over and over, finding his rhythm as he pulled out shot after shot. Kaminari purposely started by drawing it back too quickly, since the only risk of drawing it back too quickly was miffing his own attack instead of getting counterattacked. He had a good pace as he avoided Wraith's attacks with the footwork he learned earlier, then advanced into his range and tried some counterattacks of his own. In the end though, as much as he wanted to, Midoriya couldn't spend all his time with Kaminari. I hope you've gotten a feel for it now, Kaminari, cause I've got a little more training to do with Kirishima. Yuppers, sir, yuppers, that was a new one. What do y'all want me to do in the meantime? You know how you cross the river over and over while in your stance. This is gonna be like that. Midoriya walked over to the riverbank, picking a spot in it. I want another 100 laps, this time to the far bank and back. You're only allowed to move forward with that first attacking step. Only move on the weird baby step, gotcha. That first step seemed to be Kaminari's big current problem, he was actually kind of bad at it. He could do it fine when he added other steps with it, like running into the attack, but just that one step on its own threw him off. This should force him to get used to the timing of just using one step and make him better at throwing it out at any time. Midoriya saw Kaminari's first dozen swings before turning his attention to his other student, the one who still needed a lot of help. It'd be a while before Kirishima got good at the stances thing, as Midoriya had to often break his flow to remind him of portions, but he was trying at least. It was time to actually move on to hitting things. Alright Kirishima, how are you feeling about the stances thing? Any big problems? Not really, but why do I need to crouch and lean? The crouch stops me from falling over when I lean, but what's the point of leaning? I'll just show you. Kirishima, stand in a normal stance. Might want to harden your body too. Kirishima straightened out and stood up, then got into his usual fighting position with hands pointlessly hardened. I meant your whole body, defensively. I'm going to hit you to demonstrate it. Quote. That's the first time I've heard that. Alrighty, sir. No sooner did Kirishima harden his whole body than Midoriya hit him with a spinning back kick in the stomach, sending him rolling backward and into the dirt. Midoriya approached while giving Kirishima room to get up, leaning down to make sure nothing went wrong while offering him a hand up and out of the dirt. Are you alright? Of course, with my quirk that's nothing. Midoriya then helped Kirishima back to his feet, making sure nothing was injured. If I see it coming, I'm practically unbeatable. Glad to hear it, now please get into your stance and say when. Midoriya smiled and adjusted his leg while Kirishima took about 10 seconds to get into a mostly proper position, then spent a few more seconds to correct his posture with minimal advice. Kirishima would just follow Midoriya's blindfolded gaze, figure out what was wrong with whatever Midoriya was looking at, then quickly fix it. Ready, sir. Once again Midoriya's body spun as he kicked at Kirishima's stomach. This time, however, the kick hit Kirishima's elbows instead of the stomach that was hidden underneath. The elbows were pushed back, diffusing the blow and wasting its energy. Kirishima dug into the ground with his new stance and lowered his center of gravity, barely moving in the ground instead of losing his balance. Do you feel the difference? Midoriya could spell it out, but he liked his students to do some of the thinking. He was trying to teach them, after all, and it helped if he could tell what they were learning and what they weren't learning, like Kaminari in that first step. I felt not falling over, that felt pretty good. That didn't sound like the correct grammar, but it was a start. Kirishima at least elaborated with a motivational wavy hand motion from Midoriya. I felt more grounded, solid. Good observation. I probably should have demonstrated that a little early, my apologies. Midoriya bowed slightly for his mistake. He should have led by showing the point of the exercise, a mistake he wouldn't make going forward. I'll do better on demonstrating and teaching you this time. So you're gonna teach me how to punch? Quote. Well, we'll start with showing you how to punch. What comes after that is up to you. Wraith took a few paces back to a certain tree with small leaves, this time not to just show off but to properly teach his student. Watch closely. Chapter and notes. Yu-Yo Yagati. Feels weird to end it on a Yagati, but I will. For now, IDK, maybe I'll change it later. Sorry this took so long, I went kayaking in my hands. Literally dead. Poor baby hands. I'm having to type this with my feet. Big sad. But as for this chapter, we get back into learning stuff and we get to see my least favorite but favorite stuff, Midoriya fucking up. There's no beating around the bush, he's kind of a dick to Kirishima, especially at the start. What an asshole. That ending was to show that Midoriya is starting to take Kirishima a little more seriously and not just being a dick in the most polite way he knows, but he still doesn't actually want Kirishima around that much and would rather be focusing on his favorite student. One of Ronin's reoccurring themes is imperfection and people not being perfect at what they want, and Midoriya is definitely not a perfect teacher by a long shot, nor is he meant to be. Speaking of teaching, Midoriya also demonstrates the thing he's best at when it comes to teaching, practical application. Because he only learns moves and styles when he needs to, like how he only barely learned boxing because he hasn't needed it yet, he's very good at demonstrating what things do and why they're important overall. And while we're doing a speaking chain, speaking of boxing, something that some people will notice is that Midoriya's kind of shit at boxing. He talks a big game, but his jab isn't that solid for a professional fighter, coming in at 9/5 of a second. I, a bad boxer, can throw out 13/5, but mine are pretty weightless cause I suck and I need to practice. When he needs to demonstrate the importance of a stance, he doesn't do it with a boxing move like an overhand right but a kick, because he's not used to punching right now. Look forward to that arc eventually. So, I originally was going to put a section about the test in the last chapter and how it pertains to UA for the sake of the test. UA is the only viable hero option right now. The other two clear options are the Hero Association, Hero Public Safety Commission, which is completely corrupt and inept, and the police, who have the exact same problems but with the addition of being lazy as fuck. Basically, out of the options, UA is the least bad on the hero side. UA, the school that constantly endangers its students. The school that wastes tons of money building robots. The school that has a one-woman nurse office, and if she were ever to get sick would be fucked. The school that is supposed to train students to fight on the streets but is jam-packed with students who don't know how to actually fight. For example, Mirio learned and created his fighting style with sources outside of UA. One last thing, comments. I haven't been responding to them lately because I've been trying to binge through this, but tomorrow I plan to take a real quick break and catch up on them. In the meantime, I'm beat. Adios, I'm gonna go die from kayaks. Chapter 126, Jabs. Chapter Summary. He do be jabbin' though. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Kirishima and Midoriya faced each other head-on underneath the canopy of the trees, with Midoriya already in a fighting stance as he spoke. The first part of the jab is your stance. Everything starts with a stance, so get used to it. Midoriya wasn't in his own usual fighting stance but was instead using the Peekaboo guard. That was the same guard Kirishima was learning, and hopefully meant that no matter how bad of a teacher Midoriya was at boxing, Kirishima would learn something. His fists covered his face, his arms covered his body, and his legs were stationed wide to face his opponent head-on. Perfect style for a hard-headed idiot who liked to exchange blows. The hand leads, and the elbow trails behind it. The hand comes forward, then the elbow comes forward. Midoriya threw some demonstration punches to back up what he was saying. His left hand left his face and streaked forward in a straight line, pulling his elbow into position behind the hand. As he retracted his punches, the fist came straight back like he was trying to punch himself in the face. Make sure it's a straight line. The jab is supposed to be a fast punch that goes to end from its target as quickly as possible, and straight lines are the fastest way to anything. Don't take detours. Make sure the hand goes in a straight line from guard. Doesn't that mean I'm always punching the other guy in his guard? Kirishima mimicked Midoriya's motion, not exactly throwing punches but more just moving his hand in a straight line. It looked like he was playing an imaginary trombone. A straight line doesn't always mean straightforward, it's just the most direct way to whatever you want to hit. Midoriya demonstrated by holding out a hand slightly above Kirishima's eye level just in range of a jab. Touch this. Kirishima got into his guard and gingerly tapped Midoriya's open palm. The power and speed were non-existent, but it got the idea across as Kirishima's left went straight to Midoriya's palm and stuck around there. Now pull back into your stance. Kirishima almost dropped his stance as he rained the nudge-like punch back into his body, but he managed to salvage it at the end. Unfortunately, he dropped his left hand as he retracted it. Straight line there and back, Kirishima. Again. Kirishima managed to do another slow touch with his left hand, once again dropping his stance but at least bringing his hand forward and back without it drooping down. Midoriya had him continue practicing hitting well, touching his palm and while critiquing his form. Kirishima really had a problem with staying in a stance, but he mostly remembered the straight line part. He got several punches that went there and back without any problems, but they were littered within dozens of bad jabs. Midoriya never let him get away with a bad jab and would instantly tell him what he did wrong. If he let there be problems now, while they were training in the middle of fuck all, there would definitely be problems in a serious situation with the chips down. He had to force Kirishima to try with every punch to make sure that didn't happen. When Kirishima was starting to get the hang of it, Midoriya added side-to-side motion. It didn't seem like a major change, but it forced Kirishima to change his formula a lot by adding in half his body. Kirishima was trying to hit Midoriya's palm, but it was too far to the left to hit without adjusting. Kirishima, turn your body. Imagine trying to talk to someone behind you by just turning your head. That's what you're doing with your arm. Add in your body. Twist. This gave the aspiring professional hero a little wider range as he practiced hitting Midoriya's palm. His arm was still relaxed and tension-free, but his pace was noticeably faster than when he was trying to get the leaves. But, it only gave him a little more range as Kirishima still stubbornly refused to do shit with his legs, and that was the problem. Kirishima's legs were damn near useless most of the time, and it would be both difficult and confusing to fix that problem with boxing. It could be done, it had to be done, and by all rights on earth, they were going to do it just to one-up that furry fucker. Kirishima, use your legs. Imagine someone's right behind you and you want to talk to them. You turn around, and you do it without breaking stance. Kirishima could turn, the problem was he broke stance the second he had to. This wasn't rocket science, it didn't even need to be explained well. Actually, if Kirishima needed the jab of all things explained to him, he probably needed to learn how to turn without breaking stance. When you need to turn, you start with the same leg as the direction you want to turn, then bring the back leg back into your stance. Stay crouched while you do it, and keep your lean going, keep hitting the hand. Midoriya restarted with his hand in the center of Kirishima's range and began to slowly walk to one side, forcing Kirishima to turn to keep up with the target. Quick adjustments, quick and small adjustments. Take the turn one piece at a time. You overturn and you create a blind spot that you're gonna get hit in, so only turn as much as you need. Don't go crazy. As little effort as possible, just like the jab, right? Yup, this style was created for endurance. To take hits and keep taking them, so you can't afford to waste energy on something as stupid as this. Keep hitting the hand and don't start to stand up, keep the crouch going good. Midoriya then switched directions, throwing Kirishima off and making him whiff a punch. Don't just throw punches randomly, throw them when you're confident. Watch the target then strike, don't just throw it out and pray for the best. How can you make a straight line to your destination if you don't know where you're even going? The direction went back and forth, getting Kirishima used to the switching directions and more used to the jab. By going for the advanced lesson, if this could be considered a lesson, Kirishima cemented what he already knew with the new information. The new techniques built on the old ones, so the old lessons were easier to remember. Hopefully, by the end of this, Kirishima would never forget the jab, because if he forgot the literally most basic punch in all of boxing, his chances weren't great at much else. Alright, you're doing good hitting my hand, but I don't want to break my hand and you want to hit something hard. As soon as Midoriya even mentioned hitting anything, Kirishima's expression lit up with joy. Yes, finally. Am I gonna fight you? Kaminari. A tree. Quote. I'm sorry, what? Kirishima stared at the tree in confusion, trying to understand the point. This was the same tree that he had tried to catch leaves from just a minute or 10 ago, and he had no idea how any of the nonsense he'd been doing would get him any closer to grabbing 4 leaves in 5 seconds. So I'm gonna go again. Yup. This time though I'm here to actively pay attention to you, so I can help you improve, the mom said while getting comfy against a tree. Remember after you hit the tree to get into your stance. How's that going to help me grab leaves? Kirishima muttered but lined up his back before jumping into the tree, shoulder checking it, then getting into the weird stance. Crouched legs, lean forward, and hands to my cheeks, this looks so dumb. That's how you know it's effective. The leaves began to fall, and Kirishima went for the first leaf he saw, nearly jumping to grab it. Hey, what did we say about the range? Don't try to talk to someone behind you, turn around. But the leaves aren't behind me, they're above me. Then just wait for a second. Gravity isn't about to go away, you know. Wait for the leaves to get in front of you, then go for it. Kirishima rolled his shoulders then refocused, watching the last few leaves fall from his hit. He spent too long talking and now there weren't many still falling, but if he just waited for them to come in front of him. Kirishima tensed up his arm then threw his hand out as straight as he could, grabbing his first leaf on the first try. Good direction, keep the arm loose. Just touch the leaf. Just touch M. What's that gonna do? Find out yourself. Kirishima looked back at the last 2 falling leaves, then breathed in while he shook his left arm. He put his fists against his cheeks, eyes trained on one of the leaves, then stepped in. His arm limply whipped out and quickly struck the first leaf, then pulled back to his face as he turned slightly and moved after the other leaf. His feet adjusted, sliding across the dirt to make him face the next leaf head-on. His body twisted over his hips as his left came forward, moving straight towards the final leaf. Reflexively, his hand tightened as his knuckles touched the leaf FWP. 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 Quote. I did it. Yup. Now, I only need you to grab 4, FWP. FWP. But make sure you get them in a row, you want consic. FWP. FWP. Wow. Kirishima continued doing the motion, getting a feel for it as he went faster. When he kept his arm and hand relaxed, his punch felt way lighter and moved faster. When he tensed up his hand at the end of a punch, the weight came back, meaning his punches would still hurt. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Yes. FWP. FWP. Kirishima was completely enamored by the punching motion, listening to the sound as his hand cut through the air over and over, drilling it forward. Kirishima. Something tapped him on the shoulder and he instinctively turned, punching the mom square in the face with the jab. Oh shit. Sorry, sir. Are you alright? The mom stumbled backward and grabbed his face, making a strange noise before rising. Well, you have good speed, at least. A good relaxed motion too. Shame about your control. The mom grabbed his nose, making sure it wasn't broken, then fully stood. It seems you're getting better and better at the jab. You just need to improve your footwork and you'll be nearly done. Kirishima glanced at his legs, which had broken out of the stance when he turned to see who touched him, and quickly resumed his stance. Sorry sir, it won't happen again. It probably will, but if you manage to hit me that hard again, it'll be worth it. The mom seemed remarkably calm after getting socked in the face, barely paying attention to it after the initial hit. We're gonna keep going for the leaves Kirishima, and just focus on touching them for now. We'll start grabbing them later, but I want to see you practice turning between punches. Your upper body is great, but your legs need work. Jab while staying in stance and turning for 5 minutes, all right. Yes sir. Kirishima saluted, then backed into the tree, stretching his left quickly before getting into position. He watched the leaves begin to fall until they were right in front of his face and... FWP. Goddammit his fucking nose. Fuck, how did you accidentally punch someone in the face and almost break their nose? Midoriya rubbed his nose again, forcing himself to be calm as he looked over the red brick head. As blatantly stupid as he was, punching his teacher in the face, Kirishima's jab was at least looking better. Midoriya at least pretended to be made of sterner stuff, but holy shit, that jab was way stronger than his already and Kirishima still sucked. Kirishima didn't really use his legs for anything besides positioning, meaning his attacks never had his full weight behind them. They also never had their full reach, anchored in place by his bad habits. It would take much more than 1 week of training to perfect Kirishima's jab, and that was assuming Kirishima was his only student. Legs good. It didn't take much to remind Kirishima, but it took a lot of energy to actively pay attention to one person doing the same thing over and over and still notice problems. Midoriya didn't have the energy to do this kind of training for a lot of people because it spread his attention out too thin. He could barely do 2 people right now, and speaking of which. Kaminari, get those hands up higher. We want some momentum in that swing. His attention switched suddenly to his other student, taking in all the details, then went back to Kirishima. Hypothetically, with enough practice, he could teach a lot of people this way, but that was another thing that would take more than 1 week to get to grips with, and that was if they ever did this again. A student punching him in the face on accident was hardly a reason to take points off, but it showed an underlying problem with UA that this whole messing was spelling out loud and clear for Wraith. UA didn't teach shit. They weren't teaching kids to use their quirks, they weren't teaching them how to fight, and even the weakling knew more about hero laws from just reading too many books in the 3rd years. Hell, the weakling definitely knew more hero laws than the current teacher, All Might. The problem with punching your teacher in the face was a matter of concentration and awareness. Kirishima lost himself in the punching and wasn't aware of his surroundings, something that was very dangerous in a real situation. It only seemed to happen this time because Kirishima was fascinated by his own jab, but it was an underlying issue across the students. They seemed to be heavily self-taught, and if the students had to teach themselves everything, what was the point of going to school? Kirishima was clearly self-taught and just learned a random punch without learning anything about where it came from, otherwise, he'd know he picked a terrible punch to learn. The only thing worse would have been the uppercut, but hopefully no one was stupid enough to just use uppercuts. It'd be better just to go to a normal school and take the licensing tests on your own. The only thing UA actually gave people was the costumes, which were useful, but it was definitely cheaper to just buy your costume from a professional than pay tuition for UA. Maintenance would be more expensive eventually, but you'd have to go to a professional eventually. Couldn't stay in UA forever. Wraith glanced between the 2 weaklings before him, both weak in their own ways. A weak-willed idiot who just went with the flow and a weak clown who downplayed everything. Did either of these weaklings get anything out of UA? With the weakling in him? No, even as a teacher, it was a terrible idea from start to finish. The money was pointless, they could just get it from either crime or a real legitimate job, not one that just banked off taxpayers and wasted money on big robots. Their effect on heroism would be non-existent because no one actually learned anything in UA. The best they could do was maybe join some other hero school, but UA was the 3rd best in the world. Not Japan, not Asia, the goddamn world. If the 3rd best was this bad, what were the others like? Maybe the best and 2nd best were leagues better, but Wraith didn't want to travel to Australia or Spain just to find out, only then finding out if he actually could or could not get a job at one of them. Wraith leaned against a tree and massaged his nose, then blew out the blood from one side. This next generation of pro heroes was definitely stronger than the last, but they had no chance to be stronger. No, that statement was wrong. The generation wasn't stronger, their quirks were. These new kids were nothing without their quirks, a bunch of comedians across the board. Wraith could kill everyone in this camp in 10 minutes with just 2 attacks and 2 weapons, wouldn't even break a sweat. We wanted to know which side was best to join, and it's clear. Not UA, Wraith muttered under its breath. Changing heroism through that mess of a school was impossible, like trying to improve the water industry by upgrading your tap. Not only would it not change everything across the country, the changes probably wouldn't even stick past their lifetime if even. This mess needed a wake-up call to put them straight. The world had to wake up and see how bad this was really getting, forcing them to act. Stain was right, heroism had fallen to pieces and if people died for that cause, they died for a good cause. Through violence, they could force hero schools like UA to create better heroes or die, solving the problem either way. By becoming the villain they could force heroism to grow to new heights, to adapt to new times, and to evolve into a stronger industry with real heroes. They alone couldn't change heroism on the inside. No one could, but a threat from the outside putting a fire under their asses, making them reevaluate themselves and change. The threat of death was a fantastic motivator. But, fine, they'd at least finish this stupid camp and try to give these weaklings the best chance possible. They didn't just want hero schools to improve after all, but heroes too. Maybe they could send these weaklings to a real training school that could teach them how to actually fight, to prepare them for the mess that would come after they left UA. No, they said they'd go the whole week and he damn well meant to. Not just give up because they realized how fucked UA was, they already knew that. It was way worse than they thought, and UA really needed to change, but they could change it in ways outside of destruction. In ways that wouldn't affect anything outside of UA, and probably wouldn't even stick. To continue this test was pointless, they already knew how this all was going to end. To try and continue with the test was a waste of time and energy. UA failed. It was a terrible option across the board, and they just needed to accept the facts. Sir, I have a question. Kirishima was looking at them and pulled Midoriya out of himself. I was wondering, what's the jab actually for? This punch feels really light. The jab is a light punch. That's an absolute fact that can't be changed. It doesn't have a lot of weight or power behind it usually, and anything done to modify can be done to modify a straight too. It will never be the strongest punch you can throw. However, it can be the best punch you've got with enough practice. Midoriya spat off facts with ease as he rested against the tree, glad that Kirishima at least had this much interest in the fighting style he was trying to learn. The jab is used to set up your other attacks. It can lead into almost any other punch in the world, because of its speed. A jab is a quick attack that can be mixed into combinations, can get the opponent to flinch, or can just get in their face and block their view so they can't see the next punch coming. Whatever it is, a jab always makes sure the next punch is better. Midoriya pushed off the tree and pushed the hard facts away as he approached Kirishima, still running from the truth like a coward. The weakling. Like the hook. Well, he should have seen that coming. Yup, I'll show you how to do that after you grab those 4 leaves for me. Remember, I want consecutive leaves and I want it done in 5 seconds. Midoriya reminded him as tactlessly as possible that Kirishima still needed to finish his first actual test. We break for lunch when you're done, then come back and try to combine your hook and jab. Did you hear that, Kaminari? Yes, Yuri, sir. Kaminari shouted from the water, still scooting along while slashing. Gotcha, sir. Just watch this, it'll only take a minute. Kirishima smiled as he slammed his back into the tree, got into position, and... This was only taking several minutes at this point, which was impressive because it started over every time the hard-headed idiot missed 1 leaf. Kirishima, relax. You're rushing again. Don't worry, I've almost am. Yes, he almost succeeded by accident, but he still wasn't making much headway because of his stubborn attitude. Kirishima let his instincts take over too easily. Instincts were good, they were meant to keep you alive, but it was by surpassing them that you improve. If Kirishima could just correctly perform the jab enough times, it would become his instinct, not this shitty hook he kept defaulting to. Kirishima, where's the sound? Huh. That sound, Kirishima, the one when you punch me in the face. Where is it? Kirishima stared blankly for a second, threw his hand out, and listened. Then threw another too, still listening. FWP. It's a nice sound, isn't it? The sound of a clean solid attack cutting through the air, the sound of a proper punch. Midoriya first heard that sound with his sword cutting through the air as he brained gangsters in a dark building. Yeah, it is. You wanna hear more of it? Kirishima shifted a second, rolling his left shoulder. Yeah, I think so. Then calm down, take a breath. And go. The man kicked the tree for Kirishima, creating a flurry of leaves as they fell all around the pair. Relax, set your pace, and breathe. Watch the leaves and pick your targets first. The man's voice was calm yet warm, unlike Wraith's. Kirishima's body had scrunched up when he saw the leaves start to fall, but slowly shifted into a more relaxed position. Kirishima's head swiveled across the leaves, picking his targets. Don't go when they're ready, go when you're ready. The man then backed out silently and watched Kirishima work it out on his own. The boy silently waited as the first leaf fell into his range, and waited right as it fell back out. The first leaves were always the fastest, usually with a problem like a hole in them or they were at a weird angle, making them the hardest to grab. Kirishima waited for 5 more seconds before his hand started to move, slipping through the air and quickly latching onto a leaf before bringing it back to his chin sharply. His body began to twist and seize up before he paused for a moment, relaxing his arms, then sprung forward again. His hand twisted as it cut through the air, opening to grab the second leaf before quickly snapping shut and roughly pulling back, tense once again. His arm remained tense all the way to his face, but once back in guard he loosened up once more. Kirishima took a slight step back, then stepped into the next jab. He twisted his body over his hips as his hand opened slightly before clamping down on a leaf, tightly dragging it back to his face before he went for the fourth and dropped 2 leaves, resetting his time. His body began to instinctively tense up as he watched his failure before a voice nudged him from behind the tree. Relax. You didn't learn to walk on the 1st or 10th try. You didn't learn to on the 100th. However, it's because you kept trying that you eventually did learn to walk. Stay calm and stay focused. You're so close. The man spoke as he relaxed against the tree, looking over at Kirishima. That was a good run, and you can do better, but only if you want to keep going. Keep going. A real man doesn't quit when he's this close. Kirishima shouted as he spoke, then retook his position. It seemed, for all the brickhead's problems, giving up was not one of them. At least one of them had the guts to go on. Bring it on. Midoriya smiled then stood up, admiring Kirishima's commitment as he kicked the tree, creating the final rain of leaves as Kirishima rolled his shoulders, smiled, and waited FWP. 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 Chapter and notes. Yiggity yo, a whole chapter about jabbing. I guess this is accurate to boxing with how long I spent focusing on really basic stuff. Well, sorry this took so long, I got sunburned and lazy so. That's about it. Enough excuses, time for rambling. Before we get into anything serious in this chapter, just want to say I'm so glad that no hero in Hero Act only uses an uppercut with no clue how to throw any other punches. And that she's not in 1A, and that she's not in the exam F group so Wraith's going to see her use an uppercut and literally kill both her and himself. Fun times tilde. One slightly more serious thing I want to do is consistent problems. I'm trying to give a clear idea of what some characters are bad with and make it a constant problem. For the most generic example, Kirishima never uses his legs for anything. He doesn't use them to shift his weight into his punches, to get better reach, or to set up his punches. Sorry I'm not explaining these martial arts terms, I'm writing this with a headache cause it's been 2 days without an upload and I'm trying to get this done. Other problems could be Wraith's negativity, which is constantly coming up, or Midoriya ignoring facts he doesn't like much like he did when he started out heroism. There are things the characters have and will be dealing with for a while, both physical like Kirishima or mental like Midoriya. Speaking of Wraith's negativity though, I wanted one last kick at UA to keep showing the A-plot. The arc of this story wasn't to train kids and help them develop, it was to see if UA and the next generation of heroes were worth working with. I've been dredging up UA's problems a lot, but I wanted to summarize it in one chapter with Wraith observing the students and seeing what UA is currently doing for its students. Which is, if we're being honest, literally nothing. Not almost nothing, they are actually getting nothing in UA that they couldn't get outside. With one exception that I'll come back to later. 1. UA is a school. UA is never noted for being an exceptionally good school in the education department. It seems to be taught entirely by professional heroes who once went to it. To be a teacher in Japan you're supposed to have 5 to 6 years of schooling, something we know Aizawa doesn't have. All Might definitely doesn't, so it could be assumed most if not all teachers at UA don't. Heroism education seems to formally end at high school, and we don't have any indication that any of the teaching staff went beyond, plus Ultra and all that shit, to get their education before they became heroes. 2. UA for heroism. The only reason All Might teaches heroism is that he was the #1 hero. At the start, it seems like he has no idea what the fuck he's supposed to do, but that's hard to tell because he teaches the exact same way as all the other teachers, which implies that none of them know what they're doing. They aren't taught, or they aren't shown being taught, harrowing rules. We also see that the students don't all know rules for heroism, rescuing, or fighting. Speaking of which. 3. Fighting. The fact that martial arts aren't mandatory before you go to UA or that there isn't a fighting class that first years are required to take, because every type of hero seems to be at risk of running into and dealing with villains, is a massive oversight. Instead, all students we see who are good at fighting acquired their skills outside UA, like Bakugo who's been beating the shit out of people for years or Todoroki whose quirk is busted as fuck. 4. Quirk usage. UA doesn't teach students how to use their quirks, and I'm not talking basic quirk use here. They don't teach students ways to use their quirks in the fields they want to, for example fighting or rescuing. They leave the students to figure it out for themselves most of the year with, so far, having helped them out for a single day. 5. Budget. UA spends its entire budget building robots in its foe cities then has the students break them. UA encourages its students to destroy the city and destroy their targets, 2 things heroes aren't supposed to do, damage the surroundings while killing the target. These both could be done in a training room, but no, we've got a budget and Nezu wanted a city. One of these is a problem Ronin could try and fix, 2 would be a project done gradually over time, all 5 are something one man can't do. And there are more. Of course there are. I didn't even talk about the health situation. But, all in all, UA is shit, and that's the last real hope Midoriya had for heroism society. It's a shame that place is shit. I'm out of words, so adios, the next chapter shouldn't get so dreary randomly. Chapter 127. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. The trio of teens left the stream together to head back to the main camp for lunch as Midoriya made a snap decision. Kirishima was still holding the 4 leaves he'd grabbed in one take with an excited look on his face, energetic at having succeeded at that first annoying task, while Kaminari laughed along and joked with his fellow student while dripping dry from walking across the river stream thing 50 or so times. Kaminari had been tasked with going back and forth across that body of water 100 times, but with the slow pace he'd been instructed to take there was no way he could do it in time, so whatever number he'd gotten done so far was good enough for Midoriya. Unlike most of these idiots. Wraith scanned through the woods and spotted the exam F kids before they even entered the clearing and made a beeline for them, telling each one the same thing. We're eating lunch now. Follow me. Wraith only waited for them to start following him with nary a glance back, ignoring all their questions as his head swam with plans. Statistically, if UA couldn't come up with good plans for even Kirishima, none of the students had any good training regimens. Some of them might, but they were the exception and not the rule, and he'd sort out which was which quickly. So, he reluctantly gathered all of exam F together for an early lunch or rather, for any lunch, since the rest of the UA students were still training. Alright, we're changing the schedule. A lot. I'm moving up the test for all of you to after lunch. It's too important to keep putting it off, so we're going to use lunch as a period for all of you to rest and recover. The supplies are open if you need them, but don't make more than you can eat. Midoriya pointed to the storage where the wild pussycats kept their food supplies, then looked over the students. Any questions? Yeah bastard, what do you mean changing the schedule a lot? You only changed one fucking thing. Bakugo pointed on the discrepancy in what Midoriya had been saying. Good ears, even if he was a dick. We're going to make some changes to the training schedules as well, but first I'm gonna need a little one-on-one time with each of you. Lunch lasts 1 hour and starts in 3 minutes, but I'm going to meet with each of you for 10 minutes out of that hour. Midoriya already planned out what he wanted to eat for lunch at least, but he was gonna have to work while he cooked and ate if he wanted to get through all of this. We're going in class order, so you're first Mina. Everyone else, start eating. Yes sir. Yes Yuri, sir. Fuck off old man. Got it Gigi. Ha. Later Mina Tilda. Yeah. Mina confidently walked after the rest of the students until Midoriya put a hand on her shoulder and stopped her dead, showing just how little attention she paid to him. Not you. No. Mina at least kept it short and simple while her facial expressions kept things interesting. Midoriya pushed her forward and talked as they moved towards the food, both being the last people to move. So, Mina, have you been enjoying the camp so far? He started with some basic questions as they stood outside the door with everyone else rushing inside to grab their ingredients. Midoriya was going to wait for them to leave so he could grab what he wanted himself, and probably to help Mina along the way. Oh, it's just a review like that, huh? Yeah, it's been fine Tilda. Her answer would have only sounded genuine to a deaf person, and not even an attentive deaf person if they looked at her face. What have you been doing all day today? Midoriya once again started with the nice and simple questions, for the nice and simple-minded. If this airhead didn't even notice that he had called her out, he couldn't trust her to do anything advanced until proven. I've been trying to melt a cliff or something, it's kind of a pain in my ass. I make tons of acid out of my hands, pour it into the rocks, and nothing happens cause they are tons of rocks. Trying to melt a cliffside would seem pretty pointless after just a few minutes, let alone hours of work. Dirt was usually slightly acidic, but not enough for anything major to happen. Instead, it would be about the amount of acid versus the amount of dirt, and the cliffside had that in the bank. Do you remember why you were trying to melt a cliffside? This served to test her memory and was an actual question on her part. The earlier question was more for Midoriya since he hadn't been paying a lot of attention to what they were doing unless it looked extremely stupid and caught his eye like Kirishima and Ojiro's training. Aizawa said it was about making my hands more tough, or more acid resistant, I didn't really get it. Fucking what? That was clearly Nezu speak for. I didn't think this through, so I'll make shit up. Tougher hands. The fuck was having tougher hands going to do? Make acid for longer periods, apparently, but this pink idiot didn't seem to have problems with duration. She managed to do it for 2 hours straight when the weakling first came up and offered her water, then another 2 hours when they gathered this band of morons. If she could create acid for roughly 4 hours in a row with minimal breaks, having tougher hands wasn't going to do shit. There was no real-world scenario where that would come up or be helpful. Quote. I believe I understand. Any problems? I'm getting so thirsty. I've been out here for hours making acid over and over, and I really want to eat. Now I'm stuck here with you, Gramps. She didn't even try to put it politely, but now the storage was clear and the two could enter and get what they wanted in relative peace. Midoriya was glad to have finished the serious business and get on to more jovial conversations, having figured out all he wanted so far. The rest he'd find out from the upcoming fight. I'm going to be honest, your training sounds pointless. What are you going to do with tougher hands? That's what I told Aizawa, but no. Still got a melt to cliffside. So unfair. Mina naturally took whatever Midoriya handed her without thought as she continued to speak. Eat is just running in circles and Momo gets to eat all day, that's so unfair. I wanna eat all day. It seemed, given the opportunity, Mina was saying whatever popped into her head. She probably was too busy working earlier to say any of this and Midoriya didn't care about it, so he'd just sit back and let her say her fill while he got some food. They made small talk for the rest of the 10 minutes, with Mina absent-mindedly helping Midoriya prepare his food. He felt bad for her so he doubled the proportions so she'd get something to eat out of this too. He didn't want to steal both her time and energy for himself, after all. All he had to do was listen for a little bit while directing her. She was good at mimicking him and had good reflexes, even if she wasn't listening while she talked and cooked at the same time. She moved fast and talked even faster, doing most of the talking between the two for the rest of their 10 minutes before they split off. After giving Mina her section of the food to finish preparing, next was Kirishima. He sat down next to Kirishima as they were both preparing their rice. It wasn't hard work to prepare rice with fire, it just took constant attention to not accidentally burn anything. Hey, sir, do you know when everybody else is gonna join us? If I'm being honest, I'm not sure if they will join us at all. That's up to your real teachers, but I'm not going to have students trying to work while hungry. It just defeats the purpose and gets in the way. Midoriya checked the fire and stacked up a few more logs, placing his small pot of rice down with the lid already strapped on. How has this training camp been going so far for you? You can be honest, I'm a big boy after all. You won't hurt my feelings. Oh, easy. That jab thing is way more fun than just getting hit by Ojiro for hours. Kirishima hopped into position with incorrect footwork and threw a couple jabs. Hey, are you part of US staff? No. Yeah, I guess I should have known. I didn't think I was gonna learn anything here, but now. 2 more jabs. It's been fun so far. I can see the improvement. Rate sighed at fun, something that really wasn't relevant if you were getting something out of work, but at least Kirishima acknowledged there was change. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Any problems so far? Bug bites. Those things are annoying as fuck. Kirishima laughed for a second then thought a little harder. Not really. The leaf thing was pretty annoying too when I started. Has it improved? Well, now that I succeeded, yeah. I don't have to do that anymore. Kirishima laughed it off, then had a moment of realization. Hey, I don't have to do that anymore. Right. Only time in my scheduling will tell. Check your rice. It took about 20 minutes to properly cook rice over a fire like this, so it wasn't best to get distracted for too long. Thanks. They settled into silence, listening to the crackle of the fires beneath them. The remedial activity's gonna be a fight, right? Yep. Good to see someone was listening. Oh, Kirishima seemed to expect a more complicated answer, but Midoriya didn't know what he wanted. Should I be worried? Depends if you're confident in your fighting skills. This isn't going to be anything serious, just a test to see how good you all are. I'd say you could sit out since we did one today already, but I want to see you at least try to use that jab in a real fight. But we could hurt you. Kirishima did catch the slight shift in Rate's mouth as it changed to a mischievous smirk. Right. That depends if that confidence is well-founded or not. Next was Sato, who wasn't actually eating any food during lunch and just taking the time to relax his body and cool off from the long work. He could talk to Sato while still cooking his rice, the reason he chose to do Sato third. So, you're Sato. We haven't really talked much till now. Sato and Kirishima had started talking to each other pretty quickly, and it seemed that after 20 minutes Sato was snapping out of his sugar coma thing, pretty quickly. His talk with Kirishima hadn't made much sense when they broke for lunch, but now he seemed pretty normal. Yup, pleasure to meet you. He was, at the very least, the least annoying student they met today. Mina's attention span was that of a fly on crack, and Kirishima was so dumb you'd assume he was a brick with a quirk, human. He was an actually big guy, around 6 feet tall, unlike Kirishima who was just taller than Midoriya by a few inches. There was at least half a foot between them. Thanks for the break, sir. I was pretty sure I was gonna pass out soon. Sato was also signature, in Midoriya's mind at least, because he was the hardest to get away from his work. Not of his own volition, but because he barely noticed they were talking to him until Midoriya stole the weights out of his hands and shouted for his attention. Then the girl next to him started bombarding them with questions, but he just ignored her. She wasn't their problem. His quirk increased his muscles at the expense of his mind, and it looked like he was practicing that by eating small amounts of sugar and staying focused. Is that what you're working on? That's a good thing to improve at. If you improve your resistance against passing out, you should be able to ingest more sugar before you pass out. If you're in a safe environment, you should try to sustain being in a sugar high for as long as possible to get your body used to the sugar and become more resistant. Ah, that's not what you were training, was it? Nope, Gramps. Aizawa said I was gonna increase my muscles by eating sugar while working out. That doesn't seem like something you'd need to come to a camp to do. Don't you do that in your own free time? Yup, same thing I thought. Sato, if you find a problem, don't just think about it. Say it. Some of us teachers are named Ken and we're very tired of making plans, so if you had one of your own, you should have said something. Oh, I didn't have a plan. That was just worse. Your thing sounded pretty good though. Here's hoping. Midoriya was forming new ideas on what they were going to do with their time at the camp. They had until 6 every night and 6 nights to go. That sounded early, but these brats were waking up at 5 in the morning and were expected to be done with breakfast by 5:30. Right now, that schedule would have to change. Any problems with the current clusterfuck? Momo mumbles a lot, that kinda threw off my concentration at first, but I got used to it about 3 cakes in. Sun's hot too. You got any spare water? The stuff from the pump needs to be boiled. I've got better. Midoriya took out another one of his saved Gatorades and passed it over to the student before opening his rice and checking it, then sealing it up tight again. There's also a tap inside if you need it in the kitchen. I don't think it's locked right now. At least, it shouldn't be. This whole camp will take a little getting used to, but I think it's going pretty good so far. Then what the hell have you been looking at? Sato seemed pumped about this, but his activity hadn't been that bad overall. Mina looked like her hands had been about to melt off when he told her to break for lunch. Same for Zero, who looked like he was about to vomit if he saw more oatmeal. Well, as good as it's been, let's all hope it gets even better going forward. Holy shit, I thought I was gonna die. I didn't even know I could die from overusing my quirk. Zero seemed to have the opposite mindset to Sato. Another tall kid and thin as a rake. He was putting the chicken with the rice and already eating, seeming to be happy that he wasn't still eating oats. You can die from a lot of things if you're not careful. You've been taking regular breaks to eat when you get too low. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna explode if I have to eat more oats. They don't taste like anything, so then I added honey. Then everything tasted like weird honey. I'll be fine if I never see any honey ever again. Well, at least you're still energetic. You can add other things to oatmeal, you know. Fruits, nuts, even some spices can go into oatmeal. You didn't just have to use honey. How was I supposed to know that? Zero took another bite of his food, then leaned back, mellowing out. Sheesh, this training's good, but it's so annoying. I run out of tape, then it takes like 10 minutes before I have any more if I start eating right then and there. I've got to ask, what did they say this training was gonna do for you? Just humor me. They said, TCH, what did Aizawa say? Hey, you said there are spices, right? You know where they are. Midoriya led Zero back to the food storage, neither one having a fucking clue where the spices were, and together searched until they found something to make their chicken have some actual flavor besides salt and pepper. I'm pretty sure Aizawa said this would give me some capacity and speed when creating this. But he said one more thing that I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it didn't make any sense and that's why it stood out. Zero took a bite of his chicken, then added some more seasoning and tried again. That's pretty good, Bakugo. Catch. Strength. He said it'd increase tape strength. Midoriya blinked, confused. How? We're being honest, Gramps. Not a clue. I think the insomnia's getting to him. This was another case where the exercise almost made sense. Mina's exercise was good because it forced all the acid out of her body, forcing her body to get better at making acid and also make more acid from fewer materials. It was not good because it made her hands tougher. What the hell did Zero's exercise have to do with making his tape stronger? Nothing, and only an idiot would think it did. Once again, UA had fucked up, and it seemed that wasn't very rare. They just ignored it until now, but Wraith refused to look past their failings now. It was clear to both of them, this was probably the last week they ever worked with UA. The difference was that one wanted to give up and leave right now, while the other wanted to at least help these students one last time. Help future enemies one last time. Still, these brats were probably all going to die the first time they got into a real fight, so no real harm practically speaking. It was just a waste of time, and Wraith hated waste. Oh yes, they were a part of a conversation. Any problems, Zero? Just the taste, god, this is good. I'm not gonna be able to eat bread for a month when this is done. I might not even eat rice. Zero was still enjoying the chicken, but did stop to think for a second. Actually, the sun's kinda bad. I might accidentally start working on my tan if we're out all day. Didn't you bring sunscreen? Hey, I was told forest. I expected forest. Then, instead, we went to a mountain, and I still needed something for a beach. Zero laughed, shaking his head. It doesn't make much sense, but hey, it's UA. Unfortunately, it is. What do y'all want, old bastard? Bakugo was already finished eating and was washing his plates when Midoriya walked over. It had taken him a minute of deep breathing just to calm himself down before he approached. Just to ask a few questions, should be quick. How's your training going? Fine, but the barrel's a pain in the ass. Why do I need it? I was actually hoping you could tell me. I get the barrel without the fire, it cools your hands so you don't damage your body from using your quirk so much. But with the fire, it seems pretty stupid. Did Aizawa give you a reason? That insomniac just said it'll open your sweat glances. Totally bullshit. For all of Bakugo's many problems, the guy wasn't stupid. Both of them knew that really was total bullshit, but Midoriya wasn't sure Bakugo knew how much that boiling water could damage his hands. That is pretty fucking stupid. Any problems so far? Wraith gave the brute a Gatorade to replenish some more of what was lost from sweating, and Bakugo snatched it with his signature glare. Other than those damn extras just being a pain in the ass. This whole thing was planned like shit. For all of Bakugo's faults, he was logically correct, and Wraith could get behind that. This entire thing was very poorly planned. People made a lot of mistakes for this mess to happen, but I guess we'll have to make the best of a bad situation and salvage it. Push past the mistakes and get something good out of this mess. Midoriya took over the pump, pumping the water for Bakugo while he cleaned his dish. Quote. Hey, heard you taught Kirishima some shit. Do you mean how to jab? Yeah, what are you? Some kind of hero? I think I already told you no, I am no hero. I'm just a very violent man. Why are you here then? Ya know, I keep asking myself the same thing. Wraith stared, dully, at the last person on the list of people to talk to. Monoma, the copy guy. So overconfident Wraith just wanted to punt him. Alright, everyone, when you've got some free time, change into your costumes and meet back up here. Monoma will begin your meeting when you're done. Wraith knocked out that problem for the next 3 minutes before going off to get change himself. Postponing didn't solve the problem, but it gave him another second to calm down before he tried out his spinning back kick. Midoriya locked the door and slipped out of his clothes in under 10 seconds, then stepped into the bodysuit. It seemed to cling to his skin, cool to the touch as it absorbed the energy from the surrounding area. Everyone else was getting too hot in the summer weather, but with the bodysuit's energy absorption it was actually freezing if he wore it too long. He'd need to add another layer underneath eventually, but those were thoughts for later. The pants came on before the boots, which he stuffed the pants into and strapped over top the pants before securing to the belt. All the parts of Beowulf and the bodysuit now shared batteries for ease, batteries that he replaced before putting any of his kit on. Next, he put on the gauntlets, attaching them to the bodysuit firmly and checking to make sure they worked correctly. He was going to grab Yamato, but for the first fight that was probably too much. He wanted them to take this seriously, and odds were that they'd treat this as a joke in the first round. They thought it was a joke, he'd treat them as jokes. He wouldn't even bother with the coat or helmet at the start either. He'd put them on for the second round, and grab Yamato for the third round. No, maybe he should lead with Yamato. No, that'd expose their identity. Not everyone would recognize their current costume, but most people would recognize Yamato's signature destructive nature. Midoriya finished checking and redoing his makeup and redid his bandana, then headed outside. Kirishima was there, he was already in his costume before lunch. Kaminari, Mina, Sato, and Zero were all in costume because their designs were pretty simple. Too simple. They protected nothing and served no purpose. Where was body armor these days? Still missing was the two with the complicated designs. Monoma came out while wearing an entirely impractical coat, too long to be rational in summer, along with slacks and a tie, almost all in black. Midoriya checked, and yes, they weren't in some bizarro world. Still summer, still bright sun, still hot as hell, but they weren't just here to complain. Monoma, we haven't had a proper introduction yet, I believe. We met just before Aizawa gave you your training. How is that training? Terrible. Ha. You thought Monoma would be upset, but he sounded almost ecstatic that it sucked. Aizawa told me to practice picking up and dropping a quirk so I could increase my quirk speed and precision. How does that have anything to do with precision? Doesn't your quirk work untouched? That seems more like a yes-no thing than a precision thing. Exactly, you get it. That's why I ignored him and did my own thing. Ha 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 tilde. Monoma went back to his ecstatic laughter for a second before someone put a hand on his shoulder. Most students here would do whatever idiotic thing their teacher asked of them. I am glad you have the strength of character to reason for yourself and think instead. Perhaps someday you can overcome your personality problem, and then you might be one of the greatest heroes of all time. Why are you so genuine? Monoma seemed taken aback by Wraith's genuine emotion that at least one of Exam F could think for themselves naturally. What's with that sad, pathetic smile? Don't just leave after saying that. Midoriya checked off that everyone from Exam F was in uniform and in line, then put his list down and began to speak loudly so everyone could hear him. Alright, has everyone finished up? We're going back to work now, so speak up if you need to. There was a myriad of voices with general agreement. Excellent. We will be doing some quick fights to see where you all are at so I can tell for myself if that is understandable. This has been pushed up to now because your training was so idiotic not even the moron who made it could explain why he did, so I'm going to be adjusting your training schedule in the fact that you will all now have training schedules instead of doing one thing for the next 5 days. These fights will last for 2 minutes or until all of one side is defeated. The kids started to speak up, murmuring to each other, so Midoriya hung back for a second while they talked. Lightning round shit, huh? That seems kind of fast, dude. Shut it, Pinky. My fight will be over in 10 seconds. What's with the time limit? 2 minutes is a weird number. 2 minutes is the general length of a single confrontation between professional heroes and criminals. Usually, if someone isn't unconscious by then, someone's running away. Real fights don't last long because people don't like pain. Seriously, pain was something that could stop an entire run dead. He had called off some nights pretty early because of injuries he got right at the start multiple times. If we go for the timeout, whoever has the most people down loses. If there's a tie, whoever has the most injuries loses. Any questions? Midoriya scanned each student to make sure they got it, also sparing a glance to the surrounding area. A lot of students outside of Exam F were throwing glances and glares at his kids. They were, after all, still working while Exam F just took an hour off to eat. What did the kids who did good get to eat? Exam F's dust, it seemed. No questions. Great. 30-second break between fights, and they start regardless of if you're ready or not. Midoriya walked away from the cooking area and towards the forest, leaving behind most of his equipment except for a timer that he now held up to show off. This timer rings like this. BRRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. So when you hear that the round's over, regardless of if it's for time or for safety. I will call rounds if it gets too dangerous. He checked that it was set for 2 minutes before putting it on his bodysuit's chest. If you're in serious pain, scream the word pawn and we'll break. Any questions so far? Last chance. Where we fightin', Gramps? The students walked forward with unbridled confidence. Kirishima slammed his fists together, grinning. Bakugo created a small burst of explosions in both hands, glaring down what was so far and soon not to be the innocent old man in front of him. Sato and Siro checked their supply, Sato opening each of his sugar compartments to make sure they were good while Siro checked each elbow had tape by just ejecting a small piece before cutting it off. Both then stretched, already trying to figure out who they'd be working with. Mina and Monoma were both showing off, laughing with very different styles and for very different reasons. Mina was skating around with her feet on acid while Monoma quickly reset 2 clocks on his waist before refocusing on the, currently, completely defenseless old man in front of them. Just over. Here. Wouldn't want to disrupt your classmates after all. They were now mostly in the woods, but could still be seen by the other heroes in case things went wrong and they wanted to intervene. This was going to look pretty bad after all, even if it was probably safer than most of their finals. How many fights we doing, old man? I believe, if nothing goes wrong, each you should participate in 3. Try to play an active part in the fight and show off your skills, please, and remember teamwork is a skill. Midoriya did a few of his own stretches and checked his hat, before deciding to ditch the thing entirely. Is that the last one before we begin? Kaminari nervously stepped up, having figured it out already but seeming to hope he was wrong. Sir, quick question, how are we fighting? 2 at a time, or? A great question, all at once, like a free-for-all. Fuck yeah, you're all dead. Against me. What? Everyone shifted to look at him as he checked the timer one last time, making sure it was fastened tightly before rolling his neck and turning to face them with a small smile on his face. Begin. Chapter and notes. You yigati you. What's popping Jimbo, we're going in straight for a good old-fashioned trial by fire. Fun times and probably more safe than the entrance exam for UA still, even if Rate's the one doing it. For some more serious shit, I want to joke that this was a filler chapter again, something I've done before, but filler is things that don't move the plot forward. It changes no characters, has no payoff, and just wastes time. This is not filler because it plays into this arc, Midoriya's test, and how UA has at this point completely failed it. Midoriya and Wraith know UA is a complete failure, but now Wraith just wants to leave early while Midoriya wants to keep going and see if the next generation can salvage this mess. They can't, but hey, it's just an excuse at this point. This is setting up the new reform training formula that the students are getting, which is going to change how they fight going forward, so it's not filler. It also gives Midoriya a chance to be with characters that he's had basically no time with so far, Siro, Sato, Mina, and Monoma, along with showing Wraith's opinion on Bakugo. Wraith's opinion on Bakugo was something I wanted to show for a while because it's different from Midoriya's, and characters having interactions is how we get dynamics. Bakugo's dynamic with Ken, for example, is drastically different from his dynamic with that piss stain of a human, Midoriya, the fucking quirkless loser. Now, I wanted to finish this off by finishing my UA sucks rant, and I wanted to finish it with something weird, the only thing I think UA does well. Want real-world combat by wasting all their budget on robots, UA can have one of the most realistic fighting scenarios at any time. Civilians, heroes, villains can die, without real negative effects. The students don't have to beat each other up all the time because they have the robots and, alright, I can't say 3 positive things about UA it seems. 1.1 Real-world combat UA could do this, but we know they don't. They still put the kids against each other and still have them beat each other to a pulp. Furthermore, this would only really be useful if the students knew how to fight in the first place. Worst of all, they never seem to use the robots outside of events. Man, this was supposed to be a compliment, but I thought of 3 more negatives in this subject faster than I could think of positives. The point still stands though that this is something students couldn't do at home. For all UA's fuck-ups with this is something you'd need to go to a hero school to do unless you constantly beat up your neighbors as practice. It's a safe place to learn real fighting moves against real opponents, something only possible in a controlled environment like a school, and yes, that is the loosest definition of controlled, since the war on drugs. Even when UA succeeds they fuck it up, it's actually impressive. Nezu's got to have like a formula or something for this, because no one can be this unintentionally bad. He has to actually be trying to make his school worse at this point. What a champ. Now, like that champ, I'm a bail and go be like Nezu and make a whole bunch of kids beat the living shit out of each other. Arrivederci. Chapter 128. Chapter Summary. A set of friendly matches to see how well UA is teaching its students to fight. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya rolled his neck as he looked across the students. As he looked across the targets. Who to start with? Kaminari? No, he needed to target the one who'd pose the most risk the longer he fought. The strongest one here, Bakugo. Wraith took his stance, testing quickly to make sure all his possessed items were working. A quick pulse went through the bodysuit and into Beowulf as he prepared to fight, finger above the timer. Begin. The students didn't know how to react, some looking at each other in confusion while others laughed. Really, old bastard. Boom. The ground seemed to shake as Wraith quickly closed the distance to Bakugo, seeming to appear out of thin air halfway through the clothesline he was throwing. The impact of his arm cut off Bakugo, knocking the air out of him before he was sent flying backward, crashing painfully into the ground before rolling along it. Wraith still had enough of the weakling in him to enjoy the sight of Bakugo getting his shit kicked in, but not enough to solely focus on that idiot. Most of the students were starting to wake up and realize he was serious, and the first one to react was the one most used to him, Kaminari. Kaminari charged with his left on his sword, smiling with confidence as he moved in towards his teacher, no, his opponent. Thunder ACK. Kaminari's thunderclap was fast, yes, but it was easy to predict. Kaminari charged straight towards his opponent and was punished by running straight into a full-powered sidekick, lifting him off the ground and knocking all the air out of him. He rose several inches as his body wrapped around Wraith's foot like a car hitting a bridge support before gravity plucked him off and he began to fall. Wraith was pushed back by Kaminari's charge, straight towards his target of Bakugo. He didn't half-ass shit, and he needed to finish the strongest target ASAP. Kaminari's push gave him a start as he turned and began to sprint again, approaching Bakugo through giant bounding steps. Bakugo pried himself off the ground with an explosion, then raised both hands, already in battle mode. His mindset made him one of the fastest at adapting, and he had been the first to realize the gravity of the situation. He had, however, not been fast enough to react to Wraith's attack, unlike Kaminari. Die! Bakugo raised both hands and created a large explosion as he was rushed, but not a large enough one to hit his teammates. It seemed while he would ignore them, he wouldn't actively harm them. Good. Wraith seemed to straight into the explosion before detouring at the last second, jumping straight over it and landing behind the boy. 5 seconds. Bakugo turned around while jumping back, moving fast but not fast enough to escape Wraith's spinning back kick. The reach of the kick was too much to be overcome just by jumping, but as it made contact with Bakugo's stomach his hands began to glow with heat. You're finished. Kablam. Bakugo rolled out of the explosion and spit on the ground. That kick had been sharp, but his explosion had hit way harder. They exchanged hits, but he definitely won that time. His body felt heavy though. Even if he did more damage, the old bastard hadn't been going for damage. He was slowly taking care of Bakugo by focusing on lasting damage, like fucking up his legs. What just happened? Is it over already? Kirishima had hardened his hands, but everyone was looking into the smoky dust cloud created by Bakugo's explosion. No, you idiot, get into position. Bakugo screamed as he scanned the surroundings. That blow had felt wrong, and with a little thinking, he could tell why. Bakugo had been thrown backward when he used the explosion, so most of the force was pushing him back instead of blowing up the old man. That's why the old man attacked so quickly, so Bakugo would be thrown backward and his explosive counter wouldn't have as much force. It was like the old man preemptively countered him. 10 seconds. The old man's voice cleanly cut through the dust as something approached. The old man now looked a lot bigger in Bakugo's eyes. He was standing tall despite taking Bakugo's explosion. Oh, he forced that explosion. The old man was planning to exchange a kick for that blast, and what did he get out of it? At first, Bakugo thought only of damage. On second thought, the old man weakened Bakugo's legs by kicking him in the body and knocking the air out of him. But only on a third look over did he notice the unintentional help he gave. Don't get close to the dust extras. Kirishima and Muscle Guy had walked straight up to the smoke since they fought hand to hand, seeming to forget the speed the old man showed off at the start. Once again, the blurry figure in the dust seemed to teleport as Muscles was suddenly pulled into the dust cloud with a yell. Hey, sneak attacks ain't manly. Kirishima didn't even move away from the smoke cloud and stepped forward, assuming that the old man had left to fight the Sugar Muscles guy, but he was wrong. He was also pulled into the dust cloud suddenly, and soon the sound of combat began to ring out from the dusty mess. Shit, if it was just Kirishima, he could throw an explosion into the dust and tell that hard head to harden up. Muscles threw a wrench in everything. Where is he? Where is he? The people outside could hear voices in the smoke, but as the people inside began to stir it up it was harder to see what was actually happening. Bakugo squinted into the dust with a hand raised for when something came out. Here. Wraith wrapped his arms around Bakugo's waist and lifted him into the air from behind. Bakugo could only attack with his palms, so he had a disadvantage against attacks from directly behind him. Bakugo screamed murder and created more explosions, but it was too late. He was stuck in Wraith's space as Wraith spun around, using the aspiring villain as a shield to block a sudden wave of ice from Monoma. Sorry Tilda. Wraith punted Bakugo into the incoming ice, freezing him in place and trapping his arms. Bakugo could normally get himself out, but only if he could use his arms. Since they were trapped he'd need outside help. Shut up extra and get me out. It seemed Monoma already had one quirk, Todoroki's. That answered half of the wildcard's repertoire, but if Wraith was being honest, he didn't care too much. A weakling was a weakling no matter how fancy its toys were. Mina absent-mindedly stumbled up to try and melt Bakugo out while Kaminari went on the offensive. I'll keep him busy while you guys get Bakugo not stuck. Unstuck. That. Kaminari stepped between Mina and Ronin, but he didn't charge in this time. He assumed his fighting stance and waited, forcing Midoriya to take initiative and change the fight. Good. But not good enough. Wraith didn't have a sword, so he didn't have the reach advantage. Kaminari should have tried to start by attacking Wraith, but instead set up a defensive style. You don't win by losing less than the other guy. Wraith bobbed backward for just a second, building up room for more power before charging forward with his arms raised defensively. Kaminari went at him with a downward strike that hit and then slid cleanly down his arm. Wraith waited until the sword slid off his arm, too low to block his next attack, before going in for a counter. He hit Kaminari in the solar plexus with a palm strike, knocking the boy back and winding him with a single strike. You win by gaining more than the other guy. Gain the advantage, gain the momentum, gain victory. Wraith's hand tightened as Beowulf activated, helping Wraith grab and lift Kaminari off the ground with one hand. Before Wraith could take advantage of his grab though, he had to dodge an incoming string of tape on his right side. Instead of trying to dodge, he threw Kaminari into the tape as he spoke. That is how you win. Kaminari and Zero crashed into each other, both getting covered in tape and becoming a tangled mess. Wraith didn't have a chance to enjoy the sight though as he instead lurched to the side to avoid ice while kicking Mina in the stomach, stopping her from releasing her classmate and getting her also stuck in the pile of tape on the floor. With everyone else out of the way, Wraith focused all his attention on the last student and sidestepped one more barrage of ice. Monoma stood tall and confident, rubbing his right arm which was started to be covered in frost. You know, I really thought. Instead of replying, Wraith closed the distance again and went for the clothesline. Monoma created a wall of ice between them, cutting off his own visibility for defense. However, as he listened nothing ever seemed to hit the ice. Where? Wraith jumped down from atop the ice wall, wrapping his legs around Monoma's body and tackling him to the floor while keeping a gun trained to his head, tapping something on his bodysuit with his other free hand. Brrrrrrring tilde. Ring tilde. You thought wrong. Kirishima and Sato stopped beating each other up in the dust cloud and regrouped with the rest while Midoriya grabbed his coat, pondering if this was going to end well for him. He wasn't good at taking on a lot of enemies face to face. Last round's win more came from the group's disorganization than his own effort, but with the right tools he could recreate that. Midoriya checked his code before checking the time. 20 seconds till we restart. Also, if I manage to stick a dead note on you, you've been killed and you're out. The students gathered again and were now seriously talking, barely sparing him a glance as he held up the dead note so they could see what it meant. With 7 of them and 1 of him, they could pretty easily win if they worked together and avoided dying. He could see the ideal combination now, start by barraging with the ranged quirks before closing in with the melee quirks to debilitate him but they wouldn't. Wraith could see them arguing and bickering, and then the melee fighters lined up to rush him. Melee was his specialty, especially since he was unarmed. They didn't even think of fighting from a range and slowly winning, but that was the point of the 2 minutes. His first domination unsettled them, and they believed they had to win in under 2 minutes really, all they had to do was survive for 2 minutes. If 2 of them survived without going unconscious or getting eliminated, he'd lose automatically. Even his speech about winning and losing was designed for this purpose, a calculation made to see chaos in the upcoming fights. Wraith glanced over to the training grounds, watching with a careful eye the other heroes. All 6 of them, 2 UA and 4 cats, were now gathered together, most likely to discuss his exercise. Irrelevant, those fakes were so used to sitting on their asses they couldn't stop them if they tried right now. 5 seconds. Wraith composed himself and walked into the forest, glancing to either side to check his escape routes. This next part wasn't really going to be anyone's fault, he doubted UA had anything close to this kind of training, so it was going to be their natural reactions. It was something not even Kaminari had prepared for, so it could be fun to witness. He checked the timer with one hand as he put in hearing protection with the other. Brrrrrring tilde. Ring tilde. Begin. They all rushed him at once. Kirishima, Sato, even Mina did it. Those were the unexpected ones, with Kaminari and Bakugo predictably taking the lead. Bakugo always liked close quarters and Kaminari didn't have any ranged attacks so he had to rush. Most surprising was the 2 they left behind, Zero and Monoma. Monoma seemed to have Todoroki's quirk, which was a powerhouse even in its weakened state. That could have done some real damage. The final surprise was Mina. He really thought she was going to stay back, but nope, she was sliding along on acid like she was riding a skateboard or something. It appeared none of them thought about this part very hard, willingly entering his forte. Wraith had one last laugh as he waited for them to approach, grabbing one of the beast's trophies from his coat and fingering the pins. He slowly made the last few corrections as they arrived, stretching his legs and... Die bastard. The first 2 approached rapidly with a small distance between them and Mina, and a long distance between them and the slower Kirishima and Sato. Back even further than that was Zero and Monoma. The whole shebang was split up all nice and neatly. Perfect. Catch. Right as Kaminari and Bakugo closed within a throw's distance of Wraith, he hurled 2 objects with pinpoint accuracy at them. Both objects bounced off the target's chests before a sudden detonation, with the second just a moment behind the first. Bang pying. FSSSSSSSSSSSSH tilde. Wraith didn't bother looking away, the bandana had been modified to deal with a flashbang sudden burst if the eyes were closed in advance. The sound was a lot worse since the helmet that was designed to bypass that problem was still in his bag, but with a little forethought and some ear protection, he was fine. While the flashbang dealt with the first charging students, who crashed into each other and slowed to a crawl, the smoke bomb was more addressed to whom it may concern, stopping everyone from seeing what was directly happening, like how Wraith dishonorably approached the 2 students who were dazed and confused from the flashbang and knocking them upside the head with the pommel of the cannonball while announcing, "Dead, dead. You're out." Ow. What? Kaminari shouted, raising more confusion for the students who couldn't see what they were getting into. Wraith then used the handcuffs, also stolen by the beast, to lock their right hands to their left ankles. On both of them, he also left a small note that simply read "dead," for when they could see again. The handcuffs were more to stop them from doing anything reckless before they noticed the notes. But this was thinking too much. It was time to leave. Wraith moved backward and upward into the trees, giving himself the element of surprise as Mina approached the first group. Bakugo, did you get him yet? Bakugo. She moved around completely carefree and at least had the sense to stop outside of the smoke, waiting for a response. Instead, she got Bakugo's screams. Slimy bastard, I'm gonna. You need help in there. Mina took a step forward as Wraith took out kindness and another smoke grenade. These smoke grenades weren't really plentiful from their police raid, but they were easy to make, something that had Ronin made but never used, the dumbass. He underhanded the smoke grenade behind her and started to take potshots from above. The smoke served to confuse Mina while blocking the other's view and discouraging them from getting closer. It divided Exam F even further than the distance by creating faux walls between them. These kinds of tactics were completely foreign to the kids, and that was a shame. A lot of good villains use these tactics, and Wraith imagined they could really get a lot of mileage out of these smoke bombs when they pick a side. Hit and run, the most cowardly fighting style in the world, and I'll be damned if it's not the most effective. Wraith chuckled, then lined up some loose shots on Mina. The blasts pushed the smoke straight at her, blinding her and knocking her back, making her more confused and panicky. Without a clear target to pick on, she started to run in the wrong direction away from her teammates. A minute 30 to go and they've fallen apart this quickly. And this was supposed to be the slow route. Modern heroism was all flash and style, about doing things dramatically and upfront. As such, it created professional idiots who couldn't deal with subtle villains. The saboteurs and assassins of the villain world went unimpeded by these clowns and gave Wraith a pretty good idea of how he'd make his money when he started taking villainy seriously. Good money to be made in both those professions. Now Wraith spared the next two idiots a glance, Sato and Kirishima. Pure offense and pure defense, he'd save them for last. Mina should be dealt with while she was open though, so it'd be her, the long range, then the close range. All under a minute 30 to boot. This was gonna be a little rushed for a stealth mission, but against these many idiots that wasn't so hard. Wraith moved quietly from tree to tree while Sato and Kirishima navigated the smoke, trying to look for a threat that had already left. His steps quickly covered the ground as he danced from tree to tree. The Beowulf boots pulled him to branches, making sure he couldn't slip on them if he tried. His motions were quick and precise, like a predator hunting prey as he closed in on Mina from above. With her unprofessional reaction to the chaos of running in a random direction, it was pretty easy to find her. Follow the initial direction, listen for someone crashing through the woods and breathing heavy, and if you manage to fuck up everything else, look for the bright pink in a green forest. She was going closer to the training grounds again, something easy to find if you could see the sky because of the constant overflow of quirks. She stopped now for a second to catch her breath and looked back. I don't think I went the right way. Kirishima, Sato, Shiro, Monomea, I don't care so much about that guy, actually. Wraith crawled into position and took off his coat, waiting for her to pass underneath him before dropping the coat onto her head. She stepped back and flailed for a second in confusion as Wraith rapidly descended, landing on the ground and moving behind her as she took off the jacket. I don't recognize this. Who? Wraith's arm slid around her neck before she could breathe out and squeezed. One arm wrapped around the front of her neck while the other pushed her head forward, his arms tense and his shoulder pulled in to give her as little room as possible to move. Wraith's leg swept her off her feet as he suddenly yanked backward, knocking her down and putting more pressure on the chokehold. Mina instinctively flailed, creating a flurry of acid as she grabbed his arm. It slowly burned through his bodysuit, but the suit regenerated right back at the same pace. She tried to scream, but no sound came out as the arm cut off blood flowed to her brain, making her pass out after just 8 seconds. It could probably be done for just 5 for Mina, but it was better to play it safe. Wraith let go of the tension and gave her a pair of handcuffs plus a complimentary dead note, then picked up both her and his coat. He had to run back to the battlefield if you could even call this mess a battlefield if he wanted to take down the rest of the students in time, but realistically speaking, this exercise had a few flaws. He should probably forego the final round to do a quick one-on-one fight with each of the students, checking their individual skill levels. After all, their group skills were obvious a mile away, he could have already told anyone that they were bad. However, the specifics amazed even Wraith. He didn't think anyone could be as bad as this group unintentionally. Forget not working together, they were actively getting in each other's way. The weakling had an easier time teaming up with that dumb rabbit than these classmates did with each other. It seemed the weakling had many fond memories of that idiot in particular, an odd feeling for a hero. Yuki was understandable, she was an actually functional real hero who did her job. Maruko was just a dumbass with a good quirk who had stumbled into the top 10 and never seemed to learn a thing. These thoughts were irrelevant to the mission. Wraith dropped off Mina and accelerated, moving even faster and faster as he closed in on Shiro and Monoma, grabbing a flashbang and smoke and lobbing both to his left. Monoma was caught by the full brunt of the attack while Shiro was just hit by the bang, having been looking in the wrong direction. Monoma instinctively set a barrage of ice towards the flashbang, attacking without checking in hopes to get his opponent in a rush. To the right Shiro. Attack to the right. Wraith couldn't tell if Shiro actually heard Monoma, but Shiro definitely saw what Monoma was doing and followed suit, throwing out a long line of tape like a fisherman setting a line. Neither one considered that their opponent had deliberately thrown the grenades away from themselves to attract their attention, and was now behind them. Wraith slid into position behind them, placing down a flashbang before kicking a confused Monoma into Shiro's line of tape. He stumbled forward, trying to catch his balance while getting more and more caught on the tape. Behind US. Behind. Bang pying. Both turned and looked straight at the flashbang as it detonated, this time blinding both for sure while Wraith took to the trees. Neither could see what was happening so they once again fired their quirks blindly. A bad response, but for people who never encountered something like this, it wasn't surprising. Heroes expected upfront and glamorous battles, not wars of attrition and subterfuge. They probably wouldn't see anything like this until their 3rd years at UA if ever, because if they ever encountered this in the real world, they'd be dead in a minute. Wraith didn't even have to try to finish them off, shoving not even punching Shiro in front of Monoma's ice blast before rolling Monoma in more tape and punting them together, stuck to the ground and unable to move. Instead of trying to stick tape to the back of the notes, he just put it on Shiro's tape strip, one for each of them. Dead and dead. Your hearing probably hasn't returned yet though. On to the last 2. He had a minute left and 2 knuckleheads to go. 2 idiots should have been an easy win, but the problem was who they were. Sato and Kirishima both had quirks that, for some reason, boosted their defense. He had no idea why or how Sato's quirk boosted defense, but it seemed to as he didn't break his hands punching through solid concrete. With half the time of the second match still to go, Wraith took a moment to scout out the remaining 2. They were searching around the smoking area, probably listening to the shouts of Bakugo and Kaminari. All this was causing more chaos for him to feed off, but TCH, running low on nades. The weakling had, sensibly, only brought so many explosives. That wasn't a real problem, they had no idea if they'd need any and they were pretty dangerous. It made sense that they didn't bring tons, but that didn't make this next part any easier. He approached through the forest branches again, taking an indirect route to the targets. By now the smoke was mostly cleared up and the students were talking to those who already lost while maintaining a healthy distance. I'm pretty sure that note stuck to you means you're dead, Baku bro. Sorry, can't help ya. Kirishima pointed at it and couldn't help laughing. What, you think this is funny? Bakugo snapped at everyone but didn't break the handcuffs at least. They didn't have too many of those to spare if he did, for the same reason as the grenades. Wraith was already out, so that meant he'd have to pin these next two instead of cuffing them. He approached from the side as they talked, unaware and unfocused. Well, a little, but this is way more relaxed than the first round. We've been here for like a minute with no sign of the guy. If he wanted to attack us by now, he'd do it. Once again he came from the back, choosing Sato to be his target. The only problem was the height difference. He'd have a hard time getting his arm around the neck of a guy head and shoulders taller than him. He'd have to kick out a leg. But seriously, I went out first. I didn't even get to show off my swordsmanship. I look like a loser again. It's more like you tied for first place. Is Gigi good at hiding? He didn't look it in the first round. Sato wasn't even calling him Gigi as an insult, the big guy was acting like it was his name. That just made it worse. Wraith froze while they exchanged glances, waiting for his chance to grab Sato. 43 seconds to go. I don't think so. Kaminari thought through their experiences. Well, maybe. He's really fast, that's for sure. No shit. We all saw that when he rushed us, dumbass. Bakugo shouted at Kaminari and Kaminari looked at Bakugo. Everyone's attention was off Sato. He silently jumped onto the giant, sliding his arms into place while wrapping his leg in position to make him fall. The children laughed for the first second as Sato grunted, trying to speak but cut off as Wraith pulled his shoulders back and flexed his muscles. The muscles cut off an artery leading to the brain, using minimal force to subdue an opponent. The second was spent suddenly kicking Sato's leg while leaning backward, trying to get him to fall off his feet so Wraith could be in control of the situation. Right now they were both balanced on his legs and could fall over at any moment, so he needed to take control. Sato was still trying to make sounds and was going to pass out in a second. Sato tapped his arm, the universal signal for giving out. Midoriya immediately let go, as his judo days had trained him to, and Sato fell forward onto his knees, gasping. You caught me off guard. Guess I'm dead too. And in one idiotic motion, the element of surprise was cut from them as everyone turned to look at them. Wraith pulled out the last dead note he'd made and slapped it onto Sato's back. He only made 6 because he could just call off the activity when he got the 7th student. But now, with the element of surprise lost. Kirishima characteristically charged straight in while throwing hooks with a smile. Ha, don't worry bro, I've got. FWP bam. No guard. Midoriya didn't even bother to run, taking one step back and hitting Kirishima squarely with a jab. Then another, and another. Ow, ow, what is this, paper cuts to death. Kirishima didn't bother to defend in the heat of the moment and instead tried to bat Midoriya's jabs to the side, remaining out of guard. That's why he was so fucked when Wraith mixed things up. Wraith threw one last jab before stepping in and throwing a left straight. To an idiot, it looked like another jab with a bit more wind up, but the straight packed far more power than a jab. It punched straight past Kirishima's guard and forced him back a step. You've got this Kirishima. Sato stuck to positive reinforcement as Kirishima was dislodged, moving backward slowly while taking a constant barrage of lefts. He didn't even need his right to win this, scoring hit after hit without punishment. What was the point of all that training if you can't even get into guard, Kirishima? Wraith played it a little cold as he piled on the jabs and straights, but it snapped Kirishima out of his funk. He took a long step back and got his form in order from the ground up. Feet, legs, lean, arms. Other than the fact that his feet were wrong, his guard now looked textbook. Wraith didn't stop barraging him with punches, but this no guard actually blocked them alongside his quirk instead of just letting everything hit him dead on. But he was still getting hit. Wraith could tell the time, still had over 30 seconds to dismantle this guy, and if Kirishima didn't start exchanging punches this was gonna be over in 5. Wraith wasn't taking this fight seriously though, so he purposely left large gaps between punches to allow for a counter. FWP bam. Kirishima's own jab hit him in the face, breaking his momentum and forcing him to stop advancing. Quote ... I hit. FWP bam. You got hit dumbass. Stop talking and punch. Wraith's momentum was broken, but his rhythm remained unswayed as he poured on more punches. Now they began to exchange punches, moving in a small circle. Keep going Kirishima, just keep exchanging. Your quirk will win in the end. What did they think this was, a boxing match? They were supposed to be dead and the dead didn't give free hints. The dead, students were watching from the sidelines like spectators around a ring. Still, Kirishima had been using his quirk since the beginning. His arms were rock hard, but they were the only thing he was hardening now. It probably helped him use his quirk for longer by minimizing the area he had to tense, like tensing an arm versus tensing your whole body. Wraith put in shot after shot into that hardened guard, inspecting Kirishima to find any weak points he could exploit. The main problem was that quirk, it couldn't be overcome in a 2-minute span safely. Anything he could do would put Kirishima in danger of injury, and while Wraith knew heroes were full of shit, he was here to train these students to become less shit. Wraith retreated slightly, but Kirishima stayed in place and continued to throw jab after jab at a perfectly solid defense. Wraith wouldn't normally do anything he didn't expect the kid to be ready for, but this was to find his natural limits. Everyone else had to fall to trickery, so Wraith would try some mix-ups on Kirishima too. Wraith suddenly broke back from the fight, dashing backward several feet and removing his coat. This finally got Kirishima to use those legs of his, breaking his own guard as he ran after Wraith. Kirishima was clearly getting addicted to punches and no longer thinking this through. His guard was broken by himself, his legwork was a mess, and he was completely open to attacks. His own eagerness was going to be his downfall. Wraith took advantage of Kirishima's open guard with a front kick straight into Kirishima's unhardened stomach. The snap kick was so fast it caught Kirishima off guard, stopping his forward progress dead. Kirishima's face scrunched up at the sudden impact as he staggered back, once again using his quirk on his full body reflexively. Wraith followed up this kick by stepping forward again, launching his jacket over Kirishima's head and following it with another kick. Kirishima now stumbled blindly, trying to block while getting the coat off while Wraith calmly and quietly walked behind the boy, lining up the grab. Throwing the coat blinded Kirishima from what was happening, and the kick made Kirishima think that Wraith was still in front of him. Now he unhardened his body, most likely because he couldn't keep full body hardening up, and Wraith struck. The right arm slid along Kirishima's shoulder and around his neck, grabbing Wraith's left bicep to anchor itself in. The left arm grabbed the back of Kirishima's head and forced it forward, cutting off the blood flow. Wraith's shoulder blades pulled together, tightening the grapple. Wraith's leg served to anchor himself as Kirishima was violently tugged backward and off balance, making Kirishima accidentally putting all of his weight into choking himself out. Give up. Wraith said it simply and boldly, confident in his win. Sato had a chance to throw off Wraith's grapple if he was given a second chance. He knew that man definitely had wrestling moves, but Kirishima was a dumbass through and through. He stood no chance against this and never seemed to learn the basic dichotomy of fights. Certain types of fighters had a natural advantage over other fighters, and the simplest way to put it was grapplers usually beat strikers. A striker had to get close to hit, and that was where the grappler shined, usually grabbing and pinning the striker exactly like this. The striker then had no escape methods and was forced to. No, even he wasn't dumb enough to. Kirishima did the dumbest thing of all, hardened his neck. This wasn't normally bad, but Kirishima's body would harden itself in whatever position it was currently in, meaning Kirishima's neck was now stuck in the choke-out position. This moron was literally choking himself out with his own quirk. If hardening didn't deactivate when he went unconscious. Midoriya immediately let go of the grapple and cut Kirishima before he could fall. Release. Your quirk now. Now. Kirishima definitely got pretty close to passing out. Right now, Midoriya wasn't sure if Kirishima's quirk would wear off the second he went unconscious or if it wore off slightly after, and now is definitely not the time to figure it out. What happened? Everything went. My neck. Kirishima rubbed his neck, confused. My vision dimmed for a sec, that's whack. What's your name? Midoriya set down Kirishima and walked in front of him, checking his eyes to make sure nothing was wrong. He didn't have a fucking clue what to do when someone nearly choked themselves out, and there was almost definitely no lasting damage, but he needed to make sure. Say your name. Say it. Eijiro Kirishima, and calm down, man. I'm fine. Kirishima shook his head and smiled. It didn't seem like any of them really realized what just happened, but he had to point it out. He took a breath in to calm himself, collected his thoughts, and refocused. Who's he? The man pointed at Bakugo, someone Kirishima regularly talked to. This was pretty routine from what he remembered, but his first aid training was mostly centered on dealing with combat injuries. He wasn't sure what kind of brain damage you could get from a bad chokeout. Bakugo, is something wrong? Kirishima seemed to get the tone that was being put off now as he started to take this a little more seriously. The man grabbed a set of keys from his coat off the ground and tossed them to Sato. The keys work for any cuffs, so go unlock those too. If you want to get Mina, she should be awakened in that direction. The man then refocused on Kirishima to address him. Your quirk hardens this in the position it's in when your quirk first activates, right? Yeah, otherwise my hair would go wild every time I hardened it. I have to use gel to get it like this. Why? BRRRRRRING tilde. Re. The man turned off the alarm and refocused on Kirishima. Does your quirk, hardening, wear off instantly or does it stick around for a few seconds? It can last like an extra second or two after I focus on it, like if I lose a hair it stays hard for a second. Did something happen? Now Kirishima glanced between the other students, confused. Kirishima, if someone gets their arm around your neck to choke you out, do not use your quirk. Kirishima did seem dazed for a second after the choke, meaning his quirk really did nearly choke him out. When you're being choked out, your body is being crushed to cut off blood flow. When you harden your body, you're hardening your body in the choke position and strangling yourself. Kirishima, you could have killed yourself. The man tried to say it gently, but it was the truth. Kirishima needed to know this to avoid hurting himself in the future. We don't have the medical equipment here to help you if you cut off blood flow to your brain, and it only takes 10 seconds without blood to start doing major damage. Do you understand? Are you sir? Yes. The man stood up and offered Kirishima a hand. I can help you deal with this problem going forward, but I need you to understand how serious this is first. Now, do you understand? Kirishima clearly didn't get it yet fully. He might not for a while, he might never if he didn't think about it too hard about this. But, right now, he needed an answer. Yeah, I nearly died, I get it. Either UA has completely desensitized you to death in 3 months or you don't, and you don't have the eyes of someone who's figured out that he nearly died. 2 large-scale battles with several of the greatest fighters in Japan. A cold night on a rooftop with just a single finger cut, leaving him at the mercy of the hero killer. A simple brawl in an abandoned building with a giant gangster who seemed to effortlessly tear him apart. But for now. Hey, Gigi, I got Zero and Monomo out too. Sato came back into the picture with everyone arguing behind him. Nice job, how many of us have you caught so far, Zero? You, me, you again, Kaminari, and Mina if my math's right. Oh shut up, you got me this time and Bakugo last time. No one else seemed to care. The man shook his head and helped Kirishima up. Everyone, we're changing the 3rd round. It is unnecessary. The crowds looked pretty defeated after their total defeat, but what did they expect? This wasn't a match like they had at their schools, this was a serious fight where he tried to gauge each of their weaknesses so their regimen would be best tailored to help them, like a certain student's inability to realize how bad his defense actually was. Did anyone even hit you, Gigi? Sato rubbed his head, confused. A lot, but irrelevant I'm afraid. We are going to be doing one-on-one fights for 10 minutes instead. We are going to fight for 10 minutes with a 30-second break anytime someone is incapacitated. We will be fighting for the duration of the 10 minutes regardless of how many times someone goes down so long as they are physically able to continue. Raise your hand if you have a question. Did we do that bad? From Kaminari, who really seemed like he had a bad run. No, I'm just fighting one-on-one to evaluate your abilities better. It's hard to see how good each of you are all at once, so this is for my sake. Any other questions? This shit was a war of attrition, not just for the students but for them. The weakling needed a minute after that to get himself together, and that was understandable. Killing someone deliberately was one thing, but to have a student accidentally kill themselves during training of all things. He probably would have been fine, but that could have been very dangerous and the problem was Wraith didn't know where that line was. He only knew that, for a good long knockout, 15 seconds was a great number. For a quick knockout, around 9. But that was a line the weakling didn't want to toe. Wraith took this moment to scan across the students as he breathed deeply, letting his heart calm down. It really showed in situations like this that the weakling had already made his decision, even if he'd never admitted. That's why he was the weakling. Well, if we have no questions, we'll establish an order. Does anyone want to go first, or should I just go in class order? Sensei, I'll do it. Of all the people, he really didn't think he'd take the lead. Bakugo walked forward. I want to fight you first, Sensei. Chapter and notes. Yo yig yig yo, fun times. For the whole nobody who wonders about the choking thing, it takes at least 30 seconds of a chokehold before things go bad according to my sources, specifically it takes 30 seconds before you're at risk of brain damage. However, Midoriya doesn't deal with this kind of stuff usually and panics, plus this isn't something he's got a lot of info on it. Kirishima would have only knocked himself out for a little longer or started hallucinating. Nothing actually lethal, just not good. But hey, they're 15-16 and if Kirishima actually managed to seriously hurt himself, he was fucked cause they're nowhere near anyone who can save him. Better safe than sorry, at least, we the Penguin Nation writing this fanfic hope. Kaminari's really getting the short end of the stick. Lot of people thought he was going to do really good at this, but I'm going to day it straight, Bakugo is the strongest person in 1A right now. He beat Kirishima's defense through sheer power which no one else was able to do, he outpaced Midoriya's full call speed, and is the smartest student when it comes to a fight. His natural instincts are unrivaled in 1A. This is specifically right now too. Todoroki never got over his fire problem so he got his ass handed to him by Bakugo and Midoriya's gone. Bakugo is the only member of the original three who's as strong as he was in canon right now, meaning that 1A overall is a lot weaker. But that's Bakugo and this is Kaminari. Well, no, actually it's all of them. I wanted to repeat something sort of mentioned earlier, Wraith was going for the win. He wasn't going all out, he didn't bother to use Yamato, but Wraith fought to be as effective as possible to try and force the students to fight their best so he could find real problems with their fighting styles. Of course Kaminari didn't last long, nobody did. He did last pretty long in a one-on-one fight against Wraith, second only to Kirishima before he got choked out. He did good, it just doesn't look it because of how quickly he went down. The man lasted like 10 seconds in the first round, that's better than Mina did in both rounds combined. Cut the man some slack, dude was fighting someone who took on 4 of the top 10 heroes and nearly won without using his best weapon. But, speaking of Mina, I just wanted to point out that the shown combat abilities of these kids vary wildly, especially if you count the movies as canon. To make my point, let's focus on Mina again. Mina participed in entrance exam. Heroes vs Villains Class Sports Festival Finals-ish. Mina did not participate in the USJ, she was on the stairs. Mina barely participated in the finals, she just ran in circles for 30 minutes. She did have a hero internship but most interns didn't fight. Most students in 1A didn't actually get that much real-world combat expertise. And the first person she fought is the thing that nearly broke Maruko, beat Crust into the pavement, and then got his equipment so he could fight seriously when he took on 4 more top 10 pros so he could kill them. It's no real wonder she didn't do well, because that wasn't the point. This wasn't a pass or fail test, it was an examination of their current skill level that would expose them to various situations to see how they reacted to things, just like the next chapter was. The next chapter's also gonna go a lot faster, cause holy fuck this was 5 minutes and look how long this shit is. Oh la shit. The dead notes were a thing I made up this chapter because I realized the weakling didn't want to give everyone concussions. I'm going to retroactively add it into the last chapter, but there's a small explanation of what they are here so it makes more sense. And finally, something I almost forgot about, the pacing. Holy fuck, this pacing shit. That's on me, my bad. This chapter was slow so I'm going to go a lot faster next time because... well, this is just too long to me. That's not a good reason, but it's my reason. I'm trying to sneak in bits of character development so you can't just glaze over it all, but this is ridiculous. Next chapter should be a little different. And again, I run out of characters. Big sad. I had something to say, but I forgot it. Adios, till we meet again. Hopefully by then I know what the fuck pacing is. Chapter 129. Chapter Summary. The end of the friendly matches, coming right with the end of Midoriya's wit. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Bakugo and Midoriya faced each other inside the forest amidst the trees. Bakugo checked all his gear one last time while Midoriya set the timer with slightly shaking hands. He set the timer on the bodysuit, then began to play with Yamato subconsciously, tapping the Tsuba with a thumb. Sensei, I don't want you to hold back. My wins won't count if you do. Bakugo was as straightforward as ever, a pillar of confidence and strength. It took Midoriya back to old times, haunting times. He could still feel the heat sear his skin. I planned to from the start. How can I tell you to try if I'm not doing it myself? Wraith took over the second Midoriya started to falter. The weakling wasn't strong enough for this, so Wraith would handle it. It was why he was created, that was his purpose. When things got dangerous the Undying would take the lead. He looked over Bakugo with emotionless eyes, tearing him apart with objective facts. Bakugo was the strongest person in 1A by leaps and bounds. The closest one to him would be probably Yaoyorozu or Kirishima, he wasn't sure, but that was just because of their quirks. Bakugo had the instincts to win, the will to kill. A necessary trait for real fighters like himself, but Bakugo was a natural. Wraith had to be trained and developed over dozens of fights, dancing on the knife's edge for months. It also showed the difference in experience. Bakugo beat up kids and robots for most of his life while Wraith went head-to-head with the biggest names in modern professional heroism and won. With the weakling's mind and hours spent in the thick of it, they held a massive edge over him. But how long could they keep that edge? He was Katsuki Bakugo. And he was Wraith. He finished putting on most of his kit, with only a single helmet left now, dangling off his hip in its folded form. The face of the Ronin. When he put that on, he'd get serious. You want to go all out from the start? You've got something in mind, sensei. Bakugo smirked as he stretched his legs, taking this match seriously. He no longer had anyone to get in his way, so all the results from here on out were really his. Let's start with our ultimate moves. No point in holding that off. Wraith stuck with the facts, not bothering with any more tricks since the last round. The weakling needed a confidence boost, and the best way was to show him how far they had passed by their previous limits. Wraith imagined the weakling's reaction was so bad because he never had to deal with Bakugo one-on-one yet. It had always been in a group, but now, they had to face their fears and overcome them. Don't die in the first hit, old bastard. Bakugo shifted into his serious fighting mindset, crouching down to fly forward. Wraith's hand firmly grasped Yamato, eager to draw and start slicing everything into ribbons. He hadn't felt this kind of thrill and fear since they took on those fake heroes from the top 10, but this was much more personal. A decade-long grudge that he wanted to be settled as quickly as possible, yet wanted to drag out as long as possible at the same time. The hypocrisy and mixed signals were confusing for someone as logical as Wraith. 10, 9, 8. Wraith's feet shifted slightly, gauging the distance between them again. He was the one who walked away, so it was really unnecessary, but Wraith couldn't just sit still. Probably because of the weakling that was in him. 7, 6, 5. Bakugo's crouch became a little deeper as he warmed up his hands. He was probably going to lead with the howitzer impact, a move first shown at the UA Sports Festival. He'd be coming in from above with high velocity for a wide-range attack, however, he actually had to get very close to use it. The moment before Bakugo tried to activate it was the best time to counter it. BRRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. Bakugo took straight into the air, flying higher and higher. By taking to the air, he seemed to negate any and all use for a traditional sword, putting himself at a large advantage. He reached a large height of about 50 feet up before he stopped, floating for a second before he launched himself downward like a hawk, pushing himself as fast as possible with a string of explosions as he began to spin. Dee. Wraith was still as a tree, both feet planted firmly as if he meant to take the hit head-on. He slightly eased Yamato out of its sheath, releasing a wave of smoky fog around himself. He slowly was encased in the fog bank, eyes ever locked on Bakugo as he flew higher and higher before closing as Bakugo began to hurtle towards him at breakneck speeds. He'd rush himself if he saw how fast Bakugo was going. Instead of staring up, he softly whispered to himself. Weeping demon style, formless technique. Howitzer. Impact. There was a lot of screaming as Bakugo decimated the forest with a single attack, creating a wave of flames as he launched multiple large explosions in a row. The explosions also pushed him backward a safe distance in case of a counterattack, but there was no movement from. Suddenly, a new set of explosions ignited, but this time directly behind Bakugo. They blasted him into his own attack, turning his power against himself as he was caught like a leaf in a hurricane. Howitzer impact only lasted a few seconds though, leaving Bakugo with minor bruises and burns from being battered around but still standing. He was breathing heavily, but his eyes were focused as he smiled. Ha, I knew it. I thought I recognized that stupid coat. Wraith walked out from a portal, sheathing Yamato. By creating a wall of portals, he could teleport Bakugo's explosion to hit the aspiring villain from behind, turning all that power Bakugo built up against himself. You've got 30 seconds to rest after that, then we go again. Understood. Baiting me into a big attack you could easily predict, cheeky bastard. Bakugo was smiling despite his injuries and stretched his shoulders. It won't happen again. Instead of responding, Wraith went to his knees, holding Yamato in his left hand while breathing deeply to get into a meditative state. Beyond him Bakugo walked back and forward, constantly moving as the timer ticked down, barely containing himself as he waited for. BRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. Bakugo charged again, this time staying low to the ground as he flew forward. He prepared to blast. Bang, bang. Whatever Bakugo intended to do got cut off as he got domed by kindness, taking the shot dead on. You bulletproof. Stop going in straight lines. 30 seconds. It won't happen again, Bakugo said as he slid to a stop, well aware he'd be dead if that wasn't an air blast. As fast as Bakugo was, he wasn't faster than a bullet, and he definitely would have been dead from the quick draw. He had been too easy of a target and got punished for it, but this was how you found your limits. Besides, Wraith intended to take the lead early when Bakugo was still testing him out. These fights would get longer as they got more used to each other's fighting styles, and began to develop counters. Wraith had more options and weapons than any of the students, so he'd always take an early lead against all the students, but Bakugo was smart and powerful enough to adjust with what he could do and win. Each round after the first two took much longer. Bakugo never charged in straight lines because of the risk of being shot, now using the trees as cover to block attacks. However, the trees were a two-way street and also were used to block Bakugo's own large explosions. Yamato didn't actually see much use against Bakugo. It was a strong weapon, but Kindness and Cupid were stronger against the fast-flying Bakugo and his explosive attacks. It took Wraith back to his fight against that airhead, Najire, as they exchanged blasts from 20 feet away. Bakugo would dominate the mid-range fight at about 20 feet, but Wraith won both the long and close-range fight with his guns and katana. Bakugo had to force his way forward, using the trees to get closer before coming out for attacks. Bakugo had only tried one last head-on assault when he tried to jump him from 20 feet away, resulting in Wraith drawing both guns and blasting him straight into a tree. The two pistols were weaker than Bakugo on their own, but when feeding off his explosive power, they could disrupt his charges. It wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but that's what made it a difficult match, and sure enough, Ronin didn't win every time. When Bakugo entirely gave up on the ground approach and switched back to the aerial approach, he managed to tackle Ronin and pin him to the floor with a hand to his face radiating heat. Quote. Gotcha. So you did. 30 seconds. Wraith took failure the same he took success, with a smile and a nod. Bakugo's progress was pleasing, from a straight assault to using cover, then mixing the two to surprise and rush his enemy. It was good progress. Wraith rose off the ground and checked his guns, walking 10 feet back instead of building a great distance like usual. Better to switch now. Wraith holstered both guns and drew out Yamato again, spinning it a few times to get a feel for it. Sensei, you ain't running away. Bakugo seemed a little surprised since all fights so far had been long-range encounters, forcing him to close the distance since that played to the teacher's strengths. But he didn't want to just play to his strengths, he wanted to test his students. Wraith grabbed something off his hip and opened it up, putting on the mask with one hand. Growth comes from change. Power comes from growth. Victory comes from power. I'm not going to teach you to nearly kill yourselves like UA or teach you some patterns like some other idiotic school. I'm gonna teach you to be great. 10 seconds left, get ready. Wraith did the last-minute adjustments to the mask, making sure the hair stayed out of his face, and took a sword stance. Bakugo gauged the distance, thinking it through, then planted his feet and raised both hands to prepare for a full-out brawl. BRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. Their brawl-like fight seemed to shake the forest, but that was all Bakugo, screaming with every swing of his hands as he demolished everything. Wraith exchanged blows for the entire duration of the round without backing down, taking explosion after explosion to the face without flinching. They crashed into each other for the last 3 minutes in one single round, both refusing to go down as they exchanged blow after blow. Wraith's body seemed to blur as he pushed the muscle suit to its limits, going as fast as possible while pushing through the explosions. His attacks came from every direction as he moved quickly, evading some attacks while barreling straight through others and hitting the aspiring villain over and over. Bakugo still flew through the air, but it was more like small jumps as he took hit after hit of the teacher's katana. The old bastard didn't hold back, so he wouldn't either. He planted his feet through every hit, grit his teeth, and paid it back double. Two blurs moved through the forest, two winds of destruction tearing each other apart. Wispy blues sliced through burning oranges, and orange flames devoured blue fog. The forest glowed as they tore into each other, planting their feet for a brutal close-range exchange before suddenly bolting in a new direction and attacking each other while they moved. It was unclear who chased who as they went faster and faster, their carnage spreading above the tops of the trees and out of the forest as they fought wherever they pleased. On the ground, in the air, off of trees, they rammed into each other over and over and over and over. BRRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. What do ya know, time's up. And, in as almost an unsatisfying manner as possible, it ended. Midoriya sheathed his sword to signal to Bakugo that they were done and jumped down from the tree, rolling out of his fall and coming to a stop. He waited for Bakugo to join him before he went back to the group to pick up the next kid. Wait, can't be. A little longer. You didn't take it seriously, you didn't use the sharp part of your sword. Bakugo made some strange statements as he stopped flying and landed on the ground, then pointed at him while shouting. What happened to all that growth and shit, huh? Go all out. There was no reason to. This is an examination, not a fight to the death. Midoriya now walked back to the group calmly. And I cannot continue to fight you, Bakugo. I have to examine the other students as well. Perhaps another time. TCH. Whatever. Bakugo's usual bad attitude came back, relieving Midoriya. To be honest, he was more scared when Bakugo got oddly formal right before the fight than when he was like this. This dickish behavior was what he remembered Bakugo for, after all. Hey, old bastard. That'd be me I assume. Old bastard, old man, Gigi, Sensei the old man thing was getting ridiculous. His wig just had a little gray in it and suddenly everyone thought he was old. He didn't have wrinkles or anything because that took more makeup than Midoriya was willing to put on before a fight. Was it his posture or something? The fake voice he did. Why did everyone call him old? What is it, Bakugo? You coming to UA? Bakugo was definitely scowling as he spoke, even if Midoriya couldn't see it. He scowled so much it was probably his default expression. No, I don't think I will ever be coming to UA after this. The absolute failing of UA to teach its students anything was something Midoriya could not ignore, as much as he wanted to. Heroism's future was, at best, bleak. Even he knew that, but did he care? UA was the home of failures and fools. They would never be returning to that place under friendly terms, a gladiatorial pit run by a rat that only taught people how to fail. Why? Doesn't matter. Thanks for the challenge, Sensei. Ah, that made a little more sense. Bakugo was so strong he probably never got a real challenge at UA to be honest, the other students at UA seemed kind of soft. They weren't good in moments of high stress, couldn't defend themselves properly, and were, to be frank, weak. This week isn't over yet. While Midoriya didn't think heroes should just fight, there was a difference between Bakugo and most of 1A. While Bakugo was all fighting ability, most of 1A had no fighting ability. Midoriya wanted well-rounded heroes with a lot of talents, not a mix of brutes and complete idiots. At least Bakugo was good at something, most of the students were bad at everything with no talents. A good hero was somewhere in the middle between these clowns, at least for combat. Whatever. Thanks, Sensei. And there, he said it again. It was such a minor detail but it confused Midoriya every time he heard it. What about him seemed so old? If he knew, he could capitalize on it to make better disguises going forward since most people wouldn't think a high schooler was an old man, but he had no idea. Wait, Bakugo didn't say old bastard this time. Was he dealing with a fake Bakugo? Midoriya and Bakufo returned to Exam F in the main building to see a mess of movement as the students moved about, doing the training methods that Midoriya had thought up in 10 seconds. Kaminari was still practicing his overhead strike, but now he was using his lightning legs or whatever he called it, combining quirk use with combat training. Kirishima was punching a tree and going for the leaves, trying to now get 10 leaves back to back. Sato was just doing a traditional workout to come back down from his quirk usage consisting of whatever Midoriya could think of that didn't require real equipment. Zero was back on tape dispenser duty since that training was technically fine and needed no revamping. Monoma was back to his self-made training since Midoriya didn't understand his quirk well enough to try and improve it and Monoma already seemed to make it as efficient as possible. Aizawa and some members of the Wild Pussycats he didn't care. They weren't one of his problems. Mina, the person he was in charge of, was currently still stretching for her match. She was up next and couldn't be training, since that would deplete the acid she'd fight him with. He wanted to get those kinds of people out quickly, which is why Sarah would be either next or last. He'd already told Bakugo what to do on the way here and instead called out to Mina. Mina, you're up. Zero, you're next. Start preparing. Wraith could see that the students had probably stopped training for at least a minute to watch the fight, just going off how everyone has inexplicably moved about 50 feet closer to the fight than when they left. Wraith could also see the heroes waiting their turn to talk, but they could wait longer. Am I gonna die? Mina looked at some of the trees that had gotten in the way of their final brawl, smashed and slashed to bits, and had an understandably concerned look on her face. I can't compete with Bakugo. Then it's a good thing you're not Bakugo. Midoriya had at least taken off the helmet on the way back, he probably wouldn't need it for this fight and it'd give his identity away. Even the dumbest students should remember Ronin, the vigilante that Nezu brought in to kick their asses a couple of months ago. I don't want you to do Bakugo's best, I want you to do yours. The random pro hero in yellow, Ragdoll, stepped up as he was trying to talk and moved in front of him with Aizawa trailing behind her. Excuse us tilde. I excuse no one. Follow me, Mina. Midoriya took a sidestep around the professional heroes who had come to disrupt his training, with barely a glance back. Eraserhead, Tiger, and something about a doll. Midoriya had a lot on his mind and he couldn't remember what her real hero name was. Hey tilde, we want a word with you. And I don't want a word with you. I'll stay out of your way, don't worry. Wraith walked past what's-her-face and put Yamato back on his belt before doing one last check as he walked into the forest. He wouldn't need the mask, the sword, or the coat. Probably. Who knew, Mina could surprise him. Ken, we just want a quick word with you about your training. Eraserhead put a hand on his shoulder as he tried to walk away, stopping him. Wasting more of their time. Can't it be done when I'm done with the evaluations? I'm trying to get this done as soon as possible. Wraith tried to appeal to them, then decided to force it into his favor. I'll be done in an hour, we'll talk then. Wraith pushed Eraserhead's arm off and continued into the forest, waving goodbye without looking back. Don't make your students wait. Good luck with teaching. Man, he didn't answer a thing. Hey, Aizawa, guess he gave ya the brush tilde. Don't even finish that sentence, Ragdoll. Mina slid around the forest in between the trees, skating across her acid. Ho, where you so fast? Practice. Aren't you supposed to be fighting me? Come on, hit me. Midoriya leapt away again, using the trees to avoid Mina by a large margin. For the first section of the test, he wanted to test her maneuverability, and it was a good thing he did. To be rude, he had no idea what Mina was good at. Her quirk could be powerful, but she didn't seem that tough herself. She lacked the obvious muscle that even Midoriya had, and her intelligence was so notable it had been the first problem listed on her document. While Wraith wondered how good Bakugo's fighting skills were, he instead wondered how bad Mina's skills were and was pleasantly surprised. Midoriya bounced from tree to tree, but Mina chased right after him like she was on a pair of roller skates, traversing the chaotic terrain with ease. She wasn't buff, but she shared their ability to be in excellent control of her body. To demonstrate this, Wraith hit a tree dead on and suddenly doubled back. This sudden change would have given most people trouble, but Mina. Hey, get back here. She slid up a tree trunk, spinning midair before taking the gravity and going even faster after him. He actually lost more speed than her pulling that turn, having to slow down and speed up again while she kept her momentum mostly constant. Good balance, excellent control too. How did you get such good control of your body? She definitely had better control of them. She seemed to be using her quirk like some sort of slip and slide, which by all rights should have sent her spiraling out of control, yet here she was. She wasn't faster than him when both went full speed, but otherwise she seemed to have every movement advantage. I don't know. Natural talent was something Wraith didn't like but had to acknowledge, but even he could enjoy someone who used their talents to get stronger instead of leaving them to the wayside. Dancing, I guess. Really, dancing. Notes for later. Wraith planted his feet and turned around again, this time diving straight at the aspiring dancer. Then let's dance. Oh, I get eating. Mina suddenly swung out of the way and avoided his sudden attack, but there wasn't just one attack coming her way. Wraith pushed straight past her and kept on moving, building up speed again as he left. Hey, no fair. This is a fight, nothing's fair. Wraith glanced back to see her trying to keep up and started throwing some more insults, trying to aggravate her into attacking. Well, it'd be a fight, but that requires two people there we go. Wraith swerved to the side to avoid some acid that she seemed to throw like a water balloon. The acid she created didn't have a lot of initial velocity, so she had to cup her hands, make the acid, then throw it if she wanted to hit a ranged opponent like him. Good Tria, so you can fight. Wraith had been running away in a mostly straight line until now, but now Mina started to pick up the pace on her attacks, throwing acid time and time again. If she was smarter, she'd cut him off with acid and force him to come closer, then use her superior mobility to catch up to him. From there she could get him with the acid that directly came off her body. But that was if she was smarter, and Wraith was having a field day right now. He cut wild again and pushed ahead, going full speed and instantly creating a huge gap between them before slowing to a complete stop. They had done enough speed testing, it was time to see how she did against a stationary target. Wraith planted his feet and got ready to fight, adopting a real fighting stance as Mina slowed down, at least smart enough to smell a trap. She swung wide around him, circling him before shooting acid at his back. He dodged it, predictably, but she didn't seem too caught up on that. Aiming for my back. Not very sportsmanlike, are we? Nothing's fair, remember Gramps. She had a huge smile as she flung more acid from a range. She understood her abilities well enough, keeping a melee opponent at bay by throwing out constant attacks and keeping a distance. He was still confused by the Gramps thing, but he'd postpone that. Right now, he wanted to see how she fought. He willing tanked some of the acids, testing how powerful it really was. Couldn't even burn all the way through the muscle suit, its regeneration factor completely cancelled out any acid that got on it. After getting a few hits from a range, Mina turned and slid straight into him, and was she trying to do a fucking uppercut? God. Mina swerved straight towards him, preparing for a comically large uppercut. She swung her right arm behind her, letting it trail back as she closed the distance, coming straight at him dead on. She crouched her legs and leaned forward, literally jumping into the punch. And was pushed to the side by Midoriya, who sidestepped the attack while hitting her in the side to force her to miss. By both doing to one side and hitting her to the other, he made sure her uppercut didn't even come close to hitting him, but she kept her momentum all the while. Because she didn't actually hit anything, she barely slowed down, and instead circled around before zooming back for another punch. This time I've got you. Mina went in for another uppercut with the exact same style, proving she learned nothing. She didn't even notice how easy the attack was to avoid. This time they'd punish her for trying to use such a stupid move. Her arm trailed behind her and she zoomed forward, leaning far too much into the punch to be functional. She slid along the ground, giving her punch no solid base. She then jumped forward, wilding throwing her arm at his chin. And was crushed from above by a left jab. The monster stepped into the dancer's attack with its left foot, pulling its shoulder as far back as it could, then let it come crashing straight down into Mina's head in the same moment Mina tried to throw the uppercut. Her own jump and momentum added into the blow, directing all that force into her face as the monster stayed planted, punching straight through her attack with a single blow. Mina took the counter punch straight to the face and flipped upside down, flying through the air before being grabbed by Midoriya, who jumped into the air after her and bodied the crash landing. He quickly put his legs under himself and lifted her up, checking her for any signs of consciousness. Hey, are you alright? Are you awake? MNGHMF. Well, she was at least alive. No signs of bleeding, but she might have a concussion. Shit, they didn't even use superhuman strength, although that jab had been more like a left straight. The dancer's own speed as she charged in had knocked her out as she, essentially, had butted a wall at top speed. It had hit the top of her head, so some of the force would be diffused at least, but she still wasn't in great shape. Midoriya started to carry her out of the forest, thinking this mess out to himself. They'd need to teach her some real close combat skills or teach her never to try that again, because there were no phrases for what she'd just done other than a mistake. That uppercut had been a terrible idea from start to finish, and Midoriya would have thought Yua would have at least stopped self-destructive moves like this one. Seriously, in a real fight, someone could easily kill her after pulling a stunt like this. Hell, she might have just landed wrong and snapped her neck on the sidewalk for doing this. Did UA not even correct its students' bad habits? What did that hellhole actually do? This was the cushy world of UA that sent kids to the relaxed world of heroism. No effort anymore, just a free ride from start until the day they met a real villain like Stain and died. They didn't need to teach kids how to really fight, because they wouldn't ever really fight. They'd just use their quirks, and if their quirks didn't work, they were useless Dekus. Wraith clicked his tongue with annoyance as he carried this idiot out of the forest. She had seemed promising, but she couldn't do anything that didn't use her quirk. He had gotten his hopes up but forgotten the world he lived in. Did I win? Mina did seem to wake up. She might have just blacked out for a second from the impact, but he still wasn't sure. Midoriya looked her in the eyes, trying to see how well she was focusing. She seemed alright. What's your name? Quote. Ashido. My head's killing me. Midoriya was pretty sure that was Mina's either first or last name because right now he couldn't really remember which was which in Panic Weakling. It was her last name. Next question. With some help, Midoriya calmed down and asked the next question. And where are we right now? Some forest place. I don't know, it's supposed to be a secret. If she could remember that much, she was probably fine. Is something wrong? Are you hurt? No, we were fighting, and now we're not. So that means something is wrong, right? Mina at least was pretty quick to figure that out. You knocked yourself out trying to land an uppercut. Wraith was completely honest with her since there was no harm in telling her if she was fine. He also put her down again, since he was not going to carry around dead weight if he could help it. Are you feeling woozy right now? Any problems? Tilda you ready to keep going? Keep what? You just got knocked out. You should be more worried. Happens all the time in training matches. Seriously, you should get some more real-world experience, Gramps. Real-world experience? They needed real-world experience. What the actual fuck was you teaching? Well, if everyone kept getting concussions it explained why these kids were idiots. This was basic safety shit. How was you illegal? This was outrageous. How much shit did Recovery Girl let them get away with? It was so bad it was making his opinion of all heroes worse by existing. Quote. Fine, we'll continue, but we stop when I say so, down to the nanosecond. If I think anything's wrong, I won't hesitate. Understand? Wraith shook his head at this idiot, amazed at her enthusiasm. Did she have any idea what safety was? Still, he was confident in his ability to prevent any further harm, and at least knew that he'd be pulling his punches going forward. If anything went wrong, this was on his head. Isn't that what we were doing already? I'm ready, coach. Put me in. She shot him a sarcastic salute making him shake his head as he took a few steps back, planning this out. Try melee again. She'd fail again and they could pack up. BRRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. The sound went off to signal the continuation of their fight, and Wraith immediately took off. He wouldn't go straight into the melee, that was too obvious. He'd get her into a rhythm and when she went for the uppercut, he'd go for a grapple and pin instead of a counter. That would safely beat her and sat the weakling in him. You're pretty fast. Mina had gotten into her rhythm and showed the difference between their styles again. Midoriya could get to top speed quickly while Mina built up gradually, keeping with their staccato versus legato nature. Once again, he led with a straightaway to build distance before suddenly throwing in some sharp turns. Mina slid between the trees like she had roller skates, creating acid with one foot at a time while pushing off the ground with the other. It had to be a pretty good lubricant with the speeds she could achieve, but it was her technique that surprised Midoriya the most in that she actually had some. She swung her entire body with every step, vaguely like a figure skater, which put most of her weight into the movement and helped her move much faster. So far, they had been navigating relatively uncomplicated terrain. The biggest problems were rocks and tree roots, but now it was time to amp it up before this ended. Midoriya ran into Bakugo's battleground and began to navigate over broken trees, weaving through the mess with ease while keeping an eye out for his competitor to make sure she didn't hurt herself. But Mina had no such problems, smiling as she jumped over and slid along the broken tree parts. Her excellent balance and good reflexes let her keep a high top speed even while navigating complicated structures, making her technically faster than even that blue robot kid with the engine lag so long as they were inside. She was smiling and laughing, clearly enjoying this. She was showing no signs of her injury as she even got comfortable enough to start using ranged attacks again, lobbing more acid at him. What's wrong? Slowing down. Midoriya mixed slowing down and speeding up with side-to-side movement, putting it all together to dodge everything easily before sliding to a stop and turning 108 degrees. His feet slid into stance, his hands came up, and his eyes silently locked onto Mina, letting his actions speak for him. You're finished. Mina, once again, went straight at him. She really must have had a concussion or 10 from UA if she thought this was gonna work. She was smiling like an idiot as she flew towards him, sliding along the ground with her exaggerated swagger straight into his counterattack. She let her right hand trail behind her as she leaned down, crouching slightly to prepare for the jump. Wraith's left hand shot forward as a proper jab, aiming this time to counter her while hitting her in the stomach and then switching into a grapple before she went flying. His left foot stepped forward, his hand cut through the air dragging the elbow behind it. And hit nothing as Mina went even lower, sliding onto her back and suddenly kicking him in the stomach with one leg. Her leg got a solid hit, driving all her momentum into him and launching him backward and through the air. Midoriya hadn't prepared or activated Beowulf, he didn't think he'd need to and though it would just put her in danger. For this misconception, Midoriya was sent rolling backward with the air knocked out of him, crashing into a log and losing all air in his lungs. He held onto the log for stability, trying to get his feet under him but lacking the strength. The dancer had countered their counter. Oh, how the tables turned. He took ragged breaths in and spit out some blood as he forced his arm to straighten. 30 seconds. Good job. Hey, we're 1 for 1 now, right? And you thought I was done? Mina winked at him while flashing a cheeky smile, but she earned it. Didn't people used to think he was an idiot, that he couldn't do this? Damn, how the tables turned. It's 1 to 1. Huh. The phrase is 1 to 1, not 1 for 1. Midoriya laughed, standing up stretching before ditching his coat to show off the bodysuit. Large black muscles ran the length of his body, only cut off by the dark gray of his arm bracers and pants. He removed Yamato too, placing it beside his coat gently. I've gotta admit, I underestimated you, Mina. I humbly apologize. Hey, guess I taught you. Lesson. Wait. Mina squinted as Midoriya cracked his neck, grabbing a black blob at his belt. The smooth glossy texture of the folded helmet felt reassuring in his hands as he lifted it up. Most of the helmet was still one piece, but the back slid up and down to let his head in. The man slid his head through this part now before sealing the mask shut, his entire body a variety of grays now. Rest assured, I will take you seriously now. Uh-oh. The man stretched his body, showing off his remaining weapons like the pair of pistols he kept underneath his arms. He stood to his full height as he approached, the featureless black mask and bodysuit seeming to absorb the light right out of the air, creating a living shadow that walked straight towards its opponent. There was not a glint of light or a single reflection off of what should have been the shiny metal that coated the man. Good luck, hero. BRRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. Chapter and notes. You quick notes for a quick time. I'm getting my second COVID shot tomorrow, so I'm gonna focus on sorting through comments for a bit and less on writing cause I'll feel like garbage. Yes, this is my excuse just in case my response to your comment is weird or rude. I'm sorry in advance, I've got a backlog of currently 90 comments I'm gonna try to get through and there's no time like when you wanna die because of a vaccine. Actual stuff that happens in here. I'm skipping stuff in the fights now so hopefully this goes faster, but there should, in theory, be enough to get a gist of how the fights go. Next chapter should have 3 fights in it at least, but I had to do character building for both these students. Bakugo is really important to Midoriya, Ronin's story, and Mina hasn't had any major interactions with Midoriya yet. Hope the music wasn't too cringe, but I really want to show off something I've realized, a lot of 1A is kind of fast. Midoriya, Iida, Bakugo, Mina, Zero, Froppy, and maybe Todoroki all have really fast movement abilities. Just a cool thing I noticed because I, a swarmer, or a boxer who fights by rushing the opponent, find it pretty cool. Sorry for wasting time. Big sad when Midoriya starts relating to you, because that's when he starts trying too much. Good luck Mina. Anyways, I'm tired. Hope this chapter doesn't have any Koda appearances instead of Sato, IDK man I think he'd fit right in. One's 6 feet tall and buff, the other's like 3 feet tall and a child. Basically the same person, but adios. I'ma go get stabbed. Chapter 130. Chapter Summary. Speedrun Fighting. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Aizawa sat at the outdoor benches, vaguely watching his students with one hand on his chin and the other on a juice packet, barely awake. Next to him was one of the wild pussycats, who was all too eager and far too excited for his liking, seeming happy to stare at him while rocking back and forth. At least she wasn't talking to him much, but she didn't need to. She could monitor 100 people at a time, meaning she easily could keep track of everyone here and then some. If anyone got seriously injured, she'd know about it already. But he wasn't sure she'd mention it. Anything wrong with anyone yet, Pixie Bob? Wheel, you seem to be missing a lot of sleep, since I'm not Pixie Bob. I meant physical injuries. Aizawa rubbed his eyes then finished off the juice packet while she talked. Wheel, most of the students are getting pretty tired from Quirkyuzu, the 2 in the forest are really pushing their limits. One's got a bruise on their head and the other. Well, they're both going really fast. If it wasn't Pixie Bob, Mandalay had the kid and Aizawa could see Tiger, so that meant the yellow one was Ragdoll. That's right, Pixie Bob was the one who was going crazy. They're going fast. Both of them. It was Ronin and Mina, but Mina wasn't fast. Aizawa raised an eyebrow, wondering if Ronin had some trick he was teaching everyone to move fast after what he had done to Kaminari. Yuppo, they've stopped. And they're coming back here now. We should see them in a second or two. Ragdoll swayed back and forth as she sat on the bench like a little kid, more like the students than the teachers. Then again, this whole cat motif was pretty childish with the lace and ears. He'd rather be at home with his cat. Doesn't matter, we'll talk to him when he's done. He's got 5 more students to get through. Aizawa forced his eyes open as he stared at the training grounds with absolute boredom, barely concentrating as his brain tried to find something interesting to look at. Tohei, the space girl threw up. Again. God, he was so fucking bored, he should have brought a book or something. I'm alive. Mina shouted it like it was some kind of miracle as she emerged from the forest and made a beeline for the benches, sitting down a few feet over from Ragdoll and Aizawa and placing a drink down on the table, stretching. Phew. In the background Ronin spoke to his students, keeping them organized as he worked. Zero, you're up. Sato, you're next. Stop working out and start getting ready, we should be back in 10 or so. And Ronin was gone again, going back into those woods with Zero in tow. Aizawa's eyes drifted across his students again, returning to his bored state as he drilled the wooden table with a finger, trying anything to entertain himself while tuning out everyone nearby. Like, specifically, Ragdoll and Mina, who immediately started talking. Ragdoll kicked it off, glancing over at Mina. Hey, you're part of Exam F, right? I'm Ragdoll, I don't think I've gotten to see you yet. I'm one of the wild pussycats who was out last night. Whoa, I'm Mina, and I love your outfit. Aizawa tried his best to ignore them because he was sure he'd either pass out or kill himself if he had to listen for too long. The girls broke down into that pointless conversation he'd heard all too often, commenting on each other's outfits since they were both in their hero outfits. Wait, why was Mina in her hero outfit here? Why were all of them in their hero outfits? Aizawa hadn't really questioned it until now, but when he thought about it those outfits should be at UA still. Why were they here? Hey, Mina, who gave you that outfit? Oh, GGDIDUHM. The old guy. ... I don't know his name, sorry. She laughed it off, rubbing her head and noticing some of the sticks that were in her hair. She began to untangle that mess while she talked. He brought the costumes, he also brought a whole bunch of water and stuff. Like this. Mina held up her drink, then finally remembered you were supposed to open drinks to do anything with them, quickly scrambling to open the thing and take a drink before she went back to her hair, opting to just melt the sticks out now. Ragdoll took this chance to direct the conversation towards Ronin, saying, that old guy, what's he like? He seems pretty fast. Totally, right, I didn't even know I could go that fast, it was crazy. Mina answered the second statement first then leaned back against nothing, staring up into the sky and stroking her chin while she thought hard. That old guy's weird, definitely weird. Mina laughed then took another drink. Ragdoll pushed her onward. Just weird. Totally weird. He got really concerned when I hit my head, but he's the one who hit me in the head. Mina thought hard again, formulating her thoughts. I don't know. He gets worried pretty easily, but he's super strong. He took my acid like it was nothing. Being strong and being weird are separate things, Mina. Aizawa checked the time and took his eye drops while he counted down the minutes until this was over. Still had a few hours until dinner, and then he was free. Aizawa didn't even bat an eye at Ronin being acid-proof. At this point, he'd believe it if Ronin was All Might in a lame disguise if All Might weren't an idiot. I guess. He takes this stuff really seriously. Mina took another drink, staring blankly at the forest as she finished her thoughts. Like, he pushes you really hard. Hey, so weird. Isn't that good for a teacher? Ragdoll glanced between the two, still wearing that blank smile with wide eyes. Trying to push the student to improve. Maybe you should go a couple rounds with the old guy. Mina giggled at the thought, then checked how much she still had to drink. She lifted the bottle, draining it quickly, then moved away to get back to training. It sounds fun and all, but when you get into it. Zero shot out tons of tape, trying to get a hit on that slippery old man, but he couldn't get a hit. And I thought you were fast with the jacket on. Focus. Your accuracy needs work. The old man wasn't lying when he said he was gonna take this seriously if you could still call him that. Calling this guy an old man was like calling a tank old tech with how wild he got. The teacher sidestepped past the tape and fired a return shot with his pistol, nearly hitting Zero again. You can't win a fight at any range if you can't hit. Easier said than done. Zero latched onto another tree, pulling himself back as the teacher advanced, stuck on the back foot. Ever since the teacher put on that mask and ditched his coat, he couldn't get a break. Zero checked how fast Teach Backquote was moving, made some rough guesses, then took a shot in the dark as he shot off to a new tree with his other arm. Teach Backquote quickly pursued him all the while taking pot shots, forcing Zero to be in constant motion. Your quirk is good, but it lacks attack power. Plus, if you have a fast opponent, you have no alternative attacks. Strong mobility at least for stalling. Thanks, I'm pretty proud of it. Zero was a natural talker and talkbacker, and that helped to keep people's attention on him. Zero gauged the distance and counted the shots as Teach Backquote continued forward calmly right into Zero's counterattack. Teach Backquote stepped in front of the tree Zero had latched onto and hidden behind, not even noticing that Zero was still connected to the tree. As Teach Backquote fired his sixth shot, signaling his small ceasefire, Zero reeled in that tape and hurtled towards the hunter, hitting him with his entire body. Zero managed to flip and spin through the air so his back hit Teach's stomach, knocking him over and giving Zero a chance to quickly pin him tape. Since the Teach Backquote was so fast, Zero went all out with his free arm, covering everything nearby with tape including himself. Everything was stuck in place in a second. Gotcha twice. Not bad, I Teach Backquote. Zero snickered at his own performance, looking over at the teacher who was tied to a tree, a rock, and Zero. Not bad. This is very good Zero, excellent even. Closing the distance for an easier shot at capturing me. But I do have one question. Teach Backquote looked back at Zero, who was stuck inside a bush, to the Teach Backquote, and to some branches overhead. Do you have a way to get out? Quote. Quote. I should have known all the matches were going to go long. Zero, take a drink from the bag by the trees and rest for a few minutes before getting back into training. Even if Zero only got him twice, Midoriya was still certain he had tape on him that he just couldn't find. They had gone over 10 minutes just getting out of the tape, once from Zero putting tape on a rock and pulling it into him and once from Zero going for a tackle before taping down everything. You'll probably need to eat a little after all the tape you just used, and if you want some different flavors you can ask the professional heroes since they're so eager to do something. Man, you and the pros seem so close. You good buddies. We have a lot of differences, professional and personal. I've just accepted that we're never going to get over them and moved on, Wraith said while barely batting an eye. We're settling them in a way that benefits both of us. Which will be, someday, him running a katana through them. They get a fairly painless death and make the world a better place in one swoop, killing every and anyone wouldn't be helpful, no matter whose side they were on. He just had to focus on the students and keep calm, at least until this was over. Yeah, you teach why different from Aizawa. You actually give feedback. He doesn't give feed. What does Eraserhead actually do? All they seem to hear was what UA didn't do. Didn't teach its students, didn't look out for their safety. These kids would probably be better off just trying to Google how to be heroes. Well, at least UA was replicating the circumstances that created vigilantes if nothing else. Let me think. He's got one mean glare. How is that supposed to help anyone? Alright, he did save us at the USJIF. You saw it on the news, that was us. He stepped in when a whole bunch of villains attacked and fought with them. That is a hero's job. I meant what does he do as a teacher? Praising Eraserhead for fighting villains was like marveling that a firefighter fought fires. If he didn't he'd lose his job. Hell, that was the one and only thing Eraserhead could do that could make him probably lose his job. How does he help you? Zero had his arms crossed behind his head but dropped them as he started thinking a little harder. Quote. I don't really know, to be honest. You teach a lot. No, and this will be my last time. Wraith focused a headlight rally and figuratively. They were almost out of the woods and back to the other students. Damn, ya know, that tackle thing was pretty scary. Zero switched topics, reflecting back to their fight. I was really worried you'd kick me out of the air or something. My quirk isn't built for close quarters like that. It's always scary to get closer to your opponent, no matter what quirk you have. Wraith told it like it was, finally looking at the comedian head on as he spoke. You will have to deal with them eventually though, so it's for the best that you find a way to do it before you get in a serious situation. Quote. Did you try to bait me into a close fight so I'd have to make something to deal with that? Well, you know, deal with people who fight up close and stuff. I was originally going to rush you, but then I realized that just encouraged you to run away. I instead had to make a situation where you'd take control and rush me. Wraith locked eyes with this comedian then smiled reassuringly. I knew you could do it. Good job. Zero stopped walking for a second, mouth hanging open, then started to run after him. So you did bait me into a close fight. I knew it. Midoriya returned to the group, scanned the list, and then spoke to everyone again. Alright, Sato, you're up next. After that, TCH. Midoriya clicked his tongue as he tried to pick an order for the last four. Kaminari, Kirishima, and Monoma. Monoma, do you want to go next? I suppose I can, old man. Monoma seemed as dramatic as ever, currently creating an explosion with one hand and acid with the other. He wasn't doing both at once, it was in bursts, but he seemed to have a pretty good grasp over it so far. Prepare to lose. Fantastic. Exchanges when you get close. Have you wrestled before? A little, yeah, you noticed. Your stance is wide and your arms are open, a stance designed for grappling the opponent but bad for exchanging punches because it doesn't defend the body. The old man's tone shifted as he analyzed Sato's stance without a glance back. Made him feel kind of self-conscious about how he was still talking that pose after all this time. He wasn't wrestling anymore after all. Yeah, sorry, it's a habit. I'll do better, sir. Sorry, for learning a fighting style. Now the old man glanced over his shoulder, seeming to stare straight through Sato before the young man noticed the smile on his senior's face. Never be sorry for learning, Sato. Like I said, that stance is designed to grapple the opponent. To grab them. That's why the arms are so far out from the body. It's bad at exchanging punches because it can't defend the body, but a good wrestler doesn't need to defend their body. If you're good I'll never even get that far, not with my height. The old man seemed a lot gentler, more gentle. He seemed different again as he turned around full and the alarm rang off. Now, let's see how good you are. Midoriya was still brushing off the rocks and sticks when he got back to the training ground, once again late. He didn't think getting out of a wall would be so hard, but when you got catapulted in, anything was possible. He was really glad for the jacket. While it didn't have any magic quirk properties, the bulletproof vest sewn in and layers really dampened some of those last throws. Are you sure you're alright? Sato was at least concerned for him, especially after he hit Midoriya with a tree trunk. Midoriya was not ready for Sato to start throwing things and got blindsided, even if he didn't go down. I shall survive. Your concern, however, is highly appreciated. To be concerned for your opponent is a very heroic trait. Midoriya was still massaging his shoulders. He'd definitely enjoy that time in the hot spring tomorrow, and he wasn't even done yet. Still had to get his ass kicked 3 more times. Ah, when you do hit, you pack quite a punch. Thank you. Sato did seem pretty happy with his performance, having 3 wins to 7 defeats. This was the most stops Midoriya had so far, with each match going pretty fast. When Midoriya charged, they grappled with each other. When Midoriya fled, Sato pursued, and then started doing things like blindsiding him by throwing tree trunks and rocks. The kid had a mean throw that was a lot faster than it looked. Oh, he almost forgot. When we get back, don't go straight into training. Take a drink and break for about 5 minutes, alright? Midoriya glanced up at the much larger boy with a friendly smile. After fighting me for so long, it'd just be stupid to hurt yourself from training too much. Yeah, Sato kept it nice and short while radiating confidence. Good, that aura could help people he tried to rescue and help throughout his career. Midoriya's thoughts shifted away from Sato and onto his next student as they broke through the tree line though. Monoma, your turn. Go get the quirks you want before we fight. Kirishima and Kaminari, either of you want to go next? There was a reason for the order Midoriya fought them so far. First had been Bakugo, but he volunteered. Either way, it was good that he came so early because Midoriya would need to have a lot of energy and focus to deal with him. That was definitely the hardest fight, and the only one he needed to use 2 weapons for, along with using Yamato's true power. Next up was the people who could run out of material. Midoriya wanted to get Zero and Mina out of the way so that they could fight with as much material as possible. The fight would be pretty pointless if they ran out of tape or acid halfway through. By getting them out of the way early, they could train to their heart's content. Same story for Sato. Sato's quirk took a toll on him mentally, so he wanted to get him done but not as badly as the material quirks. He wanted to get Sato done so the student would still be mentally fine by the time they fought. Plus, that's why he told the students to take a break before the fight, so Sato could clear his head and focus on their fight. That's why these last 3 were confusing. Wraith didn't really care in what order he fought Monoma, Kirishima, and Kaminari, but he'd already fought Kirishima and Kaminari so he might as well go for Monoma first. Plus, Monoma was the most unpredictable, so he'd take the most focus to fight right at the start. After a few minutes, he'd become more predictable, but it was those first few minutes that would be troublesome. He also wasn't really sure how he wanted to train Monoma. The effectiveness of his quirk depended entirely on who was around him for him to copy, and Monoma's quirk might not even last 10 whole minutes, so they might have to stop partway through for him to get more quirks. All in all, this was going to be a headache. Midoriya glanced to see if Kirishima and Kaminari had made a decision yet, but they didn't seem to be going anywhere. By the time Monoma returned, Midoriya made the decision for them. Kirishima, if you don't mind you'll be up next. Start getting ready. Yes sir. Kirishima saluted him for some reason as he walked back into the forest with Monoma in tow. He had no idea what quirks Monoma decided to pick up, but he had a feeling he was going to be a little even sore before Kirishima punched him in the face. Pissed, hey, Bakugo. Smiley had gotten into a rhythm with this whole tape thing and was now going pretty steady. Find the time to shout at Bakugo between the explosions. Monoma got your quirk, right? Think he's gonna blow up the teach. That weakling can't copy for shit, he can't even get close to me. Bakugo snarled and launched a particularly large explosion into the air, then sunk his hands back into the water. The old bastard's gonna tear him apart. So he did get your quirk. Guess he really is gonna burn down the forest. Elbows laughed, shaking his head as he dispensed more tape. Wait, did you compliment the old dude? Who are you? That walking tape dispenser was laughing, but Bakugo didn't have any problem admitting it. He's good, way better than that fucking walking mirror. He'll cave his face in. You really think he's that strong? Kirishima butted in since he was on his relaxation period, giving his 2 cents. I mean, he's fast, but his fighting's not very manly. That old bastard's weak as shit, Bakugo remembered when they exchanged punches. That old man really was showing his age then, the bastard hit hard but it was nothing incredible. Bakugo's own explosions had more kick than the old guy. You think he's weak now? Is Monoma just pathetic then? Elbows was laughing harder now, nearly doubled over. Shut the fuck up and work dumbass. Another large explosion, forcing him to concentrate on his own training. Seriously, did these idiots not get it? The old bastard is weak, but he still kicked your asses didn't he? Ouch. Low blow. He beat everybody including you Bakugo. Elbows was still making jokes. Right. Did you never get downed in your one-on-one fight? I did, but it wasn't cause he's strong dumbass. And another explosion. Bakugo let his mind drift for a second as he dunked his hands, taking a deep breath. That guy's got skill. His punches should have been weaker than mine, but they weren't. He shook off hits like they weren't shit. He's not strong, but that bastard's powerful. Yeah, I noticed that too. He punched me like 20 times in the face but they didn't really hurt, but I couldn't seem to hit him back. Kirishima thought out loud, scratching his head as he thought. Plus, dude's crazy fast. I didn't think I'd be beat in mobility but the dude gave me a serious run. The comedian reminded Bakugo of how, no matter how fast he flew, he always seemed to be catching up to the teacher. The teacher was always calm, always in complete control, and that's how he stayed on top of things no matter how weak he was. Oh tilde. Got something you wanna say Bakugo tilde? Shut the fuck up bastard. Time was running out, and Monoma's quirks were almost out of time too. He could tell by how hard Monoma started to use them, going full throttle towards the end with the 2 quirks. Mina's acid and Bakugo's explosion. A strange combination that doubles up. Both are close to mid-range quirks, both can boost mobility, but neither one can be used together because they do the same thing. Wraith picked apart the quirks as he rushed in, purposely engaging in the quirk's ideal range while maneuvering over every attack. Wraith jumped through the tree branches as he talked, using his superior mobility and control to get behind Monoma and kick him in the back, throwing the classily dressed student forward and off balance. Monoma turned and fired off a closed-range explosion, but it was wild and didn't hit anything. Wraith stuck close, whacking Monoma's arm to the side and throwing jabs straight into Monoma's unguarded face. While boxing wasn't the best fighting style, against opponents who didn't know what they were doing any fighting style could be considered the best as long as you were good with it. Both quirks are primarily fired from the hand, so you don't even have the element of surprise. Why would you choose these quirks? Monoma tried to splatter him with acid from such a close range, but Wraith deflected by hitting Monoma's arm before he could touch Wraith's body and took an explosion straight to the body, the acid on Monoma's hands being fired like bullets over him. These quirks don't go well together. How absurd. All it takes is a little creativity. Monoma stepped in again, creating more acid with both hands before switching to another explosion. The explosion launched the acid forward further than it would normally go, throwing off Wraith's estimate of how far he could dodge. With the right mindset, any quirk can be useful. Monoma pointed both hands at the ground and launched another explosion, stirring up dirt and smoke to create a small smoke screen before jutting forward as he swung his open palm, throwing acid like a baseball. It didn't hit, but it was a good idea. However, it wasn't good enough, and it wasn't what Wraith wanted to learn about Monoma. Those quirks might be good, but you're almost out of time. Monoma flinched at that, also aware they were approaching his limit without a single victory. They had stopped, but not once because he won. That limit was what Wraith wanted to test, however. Your quirk is fine with other people around, but when you're on your own is when you're at your weakest. Midoriya dodged an explosion of acid and then a regular explosion, then sunk in for the kill, hitting Monoma cleanly with a front kick. What will you do when you have no allies to support you and no quirks to copy? Copy is a great quirk, but its weakness is its dependency on others. When faced with a ranged opponent, or someone who covers their entire body, Wraith gestured to himself, you have nothing to copy, and you run out of power. What will you do to beat this? This was a serious question Wraith had. Without other people, Monoma was basically quirkless, and a lot of people had ranged quirks. How would Monoma beat them if he couldn't get a quirk? Did he have some secret technique, an ace in the hole? This time Midoriya had put on the helmet ASAP. Otherwise, Monoma would try and copy him, and that was a recipe for disaster. That was ironic because this was the easiest fight so far. Bakugo's quirk, which he knew like the back of his hand, and Mina's quirk, which was just a worse version of Bakugo's quirk, came out of the hands, had medium to low range, and could be used for movement. Monoma also wasn't anything special. Not particularly fit, durable, or fast. His quirk really was fitting with how generic he was. He made a great punching bag. That punching bag tried to speak up for himself, but couldn't seem to get a good argument going. TCH. I'll just have to win before then. Midoriya dodged his attacks with ease, then stepped in again and countered with another front kick. This doesn't end when you get a victory under your belt, it ends when 10 minutes pass. You need to think about the future. Do you have anything planned for when you can't get access to a quirk? Monoma clearly didn't think this far ahead, clicking his tongue and launching another explosion. Wraith grit his teeth and walked straight through this one, ditching his coat as he got serious. Most others made him serious by proving how good they were. Monoma made him serious by pissing him off enough. You need to plan ahead. You need to realize your limitations. You can't beat what you don't know. Wraith stepped in with a serious punch. He didn't bother with superhuman strength or anything, he just threw the worst punch of all, the haymaker. It was brain dead easy to dodge and slow, but Wraith sunk it right into Monoma's head. You won't always have a spare quirk to copy. What will you do then? Wraith stepped back, watching Monoma struggle to stay standing after that one punch, and made sure that he seemed alright. I copy other people's quirks, I'm not meant to be a protagonist. But I don't resent the body I was born with. Because, in every masterpiece, there are supporting characters who outshine the protagonist. Monoma grabbed something from his pocket and drew it out. A single red hair. Oh, Wraith got what that meant, even if it was wildly unconnected to the speech. Suddenly, instead of creating another large explosion, Monoma created a blast of flames from his left hand that nearly caught Midoriya. It seemed he really liked that quirk since it was the third time he used it if you counted the team fights. My quirk might depend on who I'm fighting with, but if I'm prepared enough I can always have the quirks for the situation. What, did you think I wouldn't plan for running out of time? Wraith slid to a stop and shook his head, muttering to himself before he charged back in. Seriously, is any one of these fights going to go according to plan? Chapter and notes. Yo yigati yo, I'ma keep it real with y'all. I hate writing Monoma. His fighting style depends entirely on what quirks he's copied, and those change every fight. Plus we've only seen him fight for real once. Plus, he's definitely the person who'd benefit the most from at least getting some gear to help him or some martial arts because, if he's on his own, he's fucking dead. Why is his hero outfit just fancy clothes and why doesn't he know how to fight? Why in the blue fuck is Monoma so stupid? For the love of God, man. That little hair thing he does. As far as I know, I made that up because I'm behind on the episodes. Canon Monoma has no counter for if he's on his own and runs out of quirks. What the fuck, man? I know he's a side character, but he has one of the strongest quirks in UA. You could have at least thought it out a little more because now he has a giant fucking weakness. This pisses me off immensely, I'm sorry. This also took too long, and it's all Monoma's fault. I rewrote his scene 4 times from scratch and edited it like 7 more. It kept getting too dramatic and emotional out of left field because, seriously, Canon Monoma is stupid as fuck for having no support items. Just a fucking gun would make him a million times better because, once he subdues one villain, the second one is way easier to take down. I want to say my hot take, Monoma will never be a professional standalone hero. A sidekick maybe, probably a great member of a group of heroes, but holy shit he's useless on his own. He acknowledges it too, so why doesn't he do anything to fix it? I'm actually dying, but this is a stupid rant so I'ma shut up. Next chapter is the last 2 fights and we'll do the talk that Midoriya Wraith has been avoiding. Sorry this took so long and the ending sucks, but it'd be worse if I tried to put all the rest of the fights in one chapter. Adios. This was added after I cooled my head. The reason I'm so salty about this is that everything in this chapter from the ragdoll and Eraserhead scene to the part where Midoriya drops off Sato and picks up Monoma was done yesterday. The scene where the boys talk about the old man took like 30 minutes, tops. All of today was spent rewriting that fucking Monoma fight because it kept going in weird directions. It started going into a sort of sad, I know my quirk is weak, direction, but we've had that before and it'd take another 3 chapters to really resolve. Then I realized that Monoma acknowledges how weak his quirk is on its own in canon. And then I realized he did fuck all to make his quirk not weak in canon, he still is worthless. Without teammates. This could easily be solved by getting a support item to help fight, like Aizawa's scarf or my sarcastic answer, a gun. Now let's just ride the wave on this gun idea cause it's the simplest and best explores why Monoma needs something like this. Monoma, on his own, can never win a fight. Let's say he encounters a villain in a one-on-one scenario and decides to fight it. If they have a ranged quirk, Monoma's fucked and will be dead long before he gets to them. If they don't, Monoma gains the same quirk as them, but his version is weaker and he's not as familiar with it, so he still loses the mirror match. In the best case scenario, Monoma stalls out but will still lose in a one-on-one fight. But with a gun tilde. He encounters a villain in a one-on-one scenario and decides to fight it. If they have a ranged quirk, Monoma whips out the Glock and tells them to pretend they're quirkless or eat lead, because ranged quirks usually don't make you a bulletproof bitch and they ain't gonna test if they can fire faster than a bullet. If they don't, Monoma whips out the Glock and tells them to pretend they're quirkless or eat lead, and if they wanna fight they've gotta run at him giving him time to shoot them. All in all, most of Hero Society could be beaten by my gun, backing my current theory. Snipe has no quirk as in a rogue American with a gun and a shit ton of bullets who's just been practicing trick shots for too long. The idea still stands, memes aside. Monoma needs a tool outside of his quirk to help him fight, and I'm very salty at him for making me waste so much time. Most of my day was spent picking my brain, trying to figure out how to keep the Monoma scene short and simple. Monoma, I love you, so this comes from the heart. Fuck you. Chapter 131. Chapter summary. Last 2 fights, fast times. Fun times. We're almost through. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Monoma stumbled back into the training grounds laughing like a maniac. His commotion caused everyone else to stop for a second to look at him as he laughed, now stopping to gloat at everyone. And I thought you said it'd be difficult. You weaklings had trouble with something so trivial. And so did you with no wins. Wraith quickly cut off Monoma's attempts to gloat, scanning the training grounds idly while he mentally prepared himself for one last mess. Kirishima, you're up. Kaminari, get ready. When Kaminari's done we'll break again for a short rest everyone. I'll give you more details when we get there. Do you understand? Yes sir Gramps. A collective shout as everyone saluted him. It seemed there was something everyone could agree on, no matter how stupid it seemed. Wraith shook his head and returned to the forest with the blockhead in tow. This was going to be a long 10 minutes to start off a very, very long training session if these kids had any say in it. There was a sudden squawk as a flock of birds took off and Ragdoll whistled. Wow, those guys are really going at it. One of them just went flying. Kirishima does have some level of superhuman strength, and the Ken guy's really light if I remember right. If Ken managed to get hit once by a serious punch, we might need an excavation team to find him. The sleepy guy, Aizawa, finished making a hammock out of his weird gray scarf and hung inside it now. But he's a tough guy. He'll be, he can take care of himself. You really don't care, huh? He knew what he was getting into. Aizawa pulled out a dropper and put something into his eyes as he spoke, sparing the students another glance. Nobody's seriously injured yet. Nope, the guy who got hit seems. Yup, he's pretty good still. Ragdoll closed her eyes as she felt the placement of everyone. The guy who got punched, that teacher guy Nezu brought in, was moving really slowly. They both were, but only one was really giving out attacks. Every single hit seemed to punch right through the teacher's guard, so it made sense. Kirishima's got a defense quirk, but he's really good with it. He's punching right through any attempts to block. I can see that super strength you talk about. Wow, look at that throw. Ragdoll couldn't see exactly what was going on, but when you could see where people were and how healthy they were it wasn't hard to piece it together. The student was currently pummeling the teacher. You could tell it was the student because he was still leaving massive gaps for counterattacks. Long pauses between attacks, it was like he was asking to get hit back. But, because of his quirk, even when he was hit he just brushed it off. He kept getting hit but it did no damage because of his incredible defense, negating the attacks without even blocking. This kid was pretty powerful. Well, he was probably pretty powerful. All Ragdoll could see was humanoid blobs right now because she had to focus on everyone. If she could just focus on them she'd get better details. But she was acting as security right now, and that meant everyone got watched. Well, they're 8 minutes in. They should be coming back. Eventually. If one of these is gonna end on time. For someone who wasn't doing much, Aizawa seemed pretty jaded about being on time. Ragdoll shrugged and looked over the students again, humming to herself. Well, it's pretty clear you've got some great students if they manage to learn this much while being stuck under you. Ragdoll snickered as she closed her eyes, blotting out Aizawa's retort and focusing on her job, enjoying her last laugh. Kirishima had learned jack shit. He was once again throwing hooks with no guard, his sloppy performance brought out by bad instincts. When Kirishima stopped thinking, he didn't just become predictable, he became pathetic. Wraith let Kirishima charge in again, grabbing Kirishima's arm as he tried to throw a right hook and flip the boy into the dirt face down, then landed on top of him and forced his right arm against his back for 5 seconds, counting out loud. 2, 1, 0. 30-second break. Wraith jumped backward and up, taking the pressure off Kirishima while he looked down on that brick head, shaking his head. You dropped your guard and rushed in again Kirishima. Sorry, sir, I'll do better. Yeah, like he did last time he said that 1 minute ago, and a minute before that, and even before that. You can talk a big game, but if you don't do it you won't get results. Wraith shook his head at the empty words and checked the time. They had been at this for 8 minutes so far and Kirishima hadn't improved once. Kirishima, is there something you're having a problem with? Huh, a problem. You keep repeating mistakes, so that usually means there's something you don't understand. Is anything confusing you? Midoriya paused the timer as he spoke. This was work and studying, not part of the match, so no reason to keep the timer going. No, maybe, kind of. Pick an answer, dumbass, I don't have all day. It's just, when I'm in my guard thing. What's with the legs? This doesn't guard anything. Kirishima demonstrated by taking a pose and it started to make sense. Kirishima didn't understand why the leg position was important, so he didn't really try to do it. He'd use his legs to get into stance, but then he'd immediately move his legs out of position and break his own stance. Then, once his stance was broken, his arms would naturally trail down until he was back to his default position. Alright, I can work with this. Alright, Kirishima, when you're in a stance you use your legs to generate more power for your punches. You can put your body and weight into the punch easier, and all of this is just the offensive stuff. We'll get to the defensive stuff in a minute, but let's tackle this. Watch my legs carefully and... The student and teacher came out a whole 5 minutes late, the most any group went over the expected time. Despite their lateness, however, Kirishima seemed to be in great spirits as he switched between normal walking and shuffling forward while throwing out jabs from his stance. Midoriya was just happy to be done with the whole mess. Finally, he was free. No more idiots to train. No more unspoken questions to answer. He tilde was tilde free tilde. Kirishima, go. Take a drink and rest, right? Gotcha chief. It seemed these kids would never stop coming up with weird names for him. Seriously, was Ken so hard to remember? It was only one syllable. Well, at least he got the message. Midoriya smiled and shook his head as they left the trees and entered the training grounds again. Eraserhead seemed impatient, the yellow wild pussycat seemed out of it, and the students were hard at work. That left one. Sensei, you're ready to go. Kaminari already had the practice swords and was walking over with a big smile on his face. He returned the smile, quickly grabbing a drink for himself as the pair went back into the forest. To be honest, I'm been excited to see what you can do, Kaminari. Do you think you're ready to go? Tilda nah, but I'll go anyways. Kaminari laughed as he ran ahead of Midoriya. Can't wait forever, Sensei. Come on, let's go. Midoriya couldn't shake off his smile as he finished his drink quickly, tossing it back towards his bag and then focusing forward as he reached under his coat and grabbed a strange black orb, putting it on straight away. Alright, let's go. The fight wasn't interesting, it wasn't surprising, it wasn't even that flashy. Two kids in the middle of the woods trying to put a piece of wood about 6 inches deep into the other skull well, practicing putting the wood into the whatever, this metaphor sucked anyways. Kaminari was forced back but refused to stay on the back foot, breaking off from the engagement to reset the fight and regain momentum. Wraith wouldn't give him an inch toe, making him earn every break as the blade chased the weakling. Its steps seemed to fly across the ground, covering more distance than should have been possible. To keep the fight level, it gave him advice freely, trying to bring out the best in the weakling. Your quirk, Kaminari. Don't use just half your skills, use your sword and your quirk. They're both parts of you, and you don't win by fighting on one leg. Got it, sir. Kaminari stopped dead, breathing out as his body sparked, then charged straight into Ronin's counter, flooring himself. Ack hit. When you have the time, Kaminari. You're supposed to tie your shoes before you run. Midoriya didn't look disappointed, since Kaminari was the most receptive to his teaching and words. He was happy his student listened so well. Start using your quirk before the break ends, so when it begins. Well, at least he remembers that well. Kaminari took off running the second he was given his 30-second break just like he had at the end of his internship, turning once he gained enough distance and turning on his quirk again before time restarted, then rushing forward with a thunderclap and flash to start the next engagement. It wasn't complicated, it was probably pretty boring to watch, and it sure as fuck wasn't a hit that would send villains flying. But that didn't mean it lacked power, especially when Kaminari switched it into a thunderclap and bolt. The bolt was an overhead strike, the same type of attack that Kaminari had been practicing all day, and now the results were showing. Instead of outright blocking it, Wraith deflected the attack, letting it slide off his sword and banking on the counter-strike to take out Kaminari. But Kaminari's practice wasn't just for power. The second that sword swing missed, he began to pull it back in, bringing the sword close to his body while he continued to dash forward. His legs carried him away from the counter-strike while his sword blocked the blade, giving him ample room to avoid the attack. Kaminari fully turned to face his opponent and then pushed in again, breathing heavily but smiling as his sword weaved through the air. Wraith, in turn, planted his feet and went in for a clash of blades. Swords flew through the air at a feverish pace, sliding along and striking each other quickly. They weren't large swings, just taps and thrusts as they kept adjusting the blades to punch through the other's guard while defending themselves. A small dance of fine-tuning and flicks of the wrist. The longer they went, the more confident Kaminari became, using more and more of his quirk with his swordsmanship. He began to practice purposely dashing past his opponent while attacking, then refocusing on his opponent, taking better control of his fast movements as he got used to them. This was his longest prolonged exposure with super speed, so taking it slow and steady was the best option. Wraith wasn't making it easy by any measure, but he was keeping it simple. Kaminari didn't know any advanced tricks, but he needed good control over the basics, so Wraith pushed those basics to their limits. His attacks flowed together like a dance of death, steadfast in his purpose. He was in complete control of the situation, united with the weakling to push Kaminari to grow. Midoriya took smaller steps, letting Kaminari exploit his speed advantage and get comfortable with it while he gradually got faster and faster with his strikes. He aimed for weak points with every strike, secretly drilling into the aspiring hero the points that he'd need to defend in a real fight. He pulled the speed and weight back at the last moment, giving Kaminari the opportunity to deflect his strikes and smiling with joy and pride as the blonde bolt took every chance he'd get. Wraith threw his own overhead strike and was blocked immediately by the aspiring hero before the blade even got below his head, swords crossed as neither back down. The stalemate only lasted a moment as Kaminari threw his entire body into a pseudo-tackle right as Wraith tried to break it with a kick, but a tackle had a lot more weight and power behind it than a kick. Kaminari knocked Wraith backward and followed it up with a swing to the body, now taking the momentum and forcing Wraith on the defensive. He now stepped back as Kaminari stepped forward, Kaminari using his quirk to quickly advance in and strike before pulling back, ducking in and out of Wraith's range. Good. Kaminari kept weaving back and forth, stepping in with attacks then disappearing before Ronin hit back. Seeing that Kaminari held the advantage, now Ronin raised the stakes to dislodge Kaminari and push back. As Kaminari approached for the next attack, Ronin raised a leg and struck with a front kick, whipping his leg through the air and striking Kaminari before the aspiring hero could hit him with his sword. That kick threw Kaminari back and off base, giving Ronin the chance to take back the momentum as he charged in with his sword. Now Ronin slowly advanced with constant light attacks from every direction, not putting much weight into any of the swings but keeping them incredibly fast. Kaminari was staggered for just a second by the rush but pulled himself together and pulled back further, breaking off the engagement to get himself under control. They both stopped dead, catching their breath without stopping the time. They stared each other down for a second, adjusting their stances as they stood. Ronin's eyes flicked down to check the time. 30 seconds to go. Pick up the pace for the last portion, go all out for the last 10. Test his limits. Ronin breathed in as he squatted down a little deeper, then jumped forward and up. He began to move along the trees and branches instead of just charging forward, kicking up the movement complexity to see how Kaminari would deal with this. Kaminari's main advantage had been his mobility superiority. What would he do when it was lost? Kaminari blinked for a second then tensed, the voltage in his legs increasing enough for it to be visible and theoretically increasing his speed as well. Thunder breathing, 5%. Kaminari took off after his opponent, meeting midair for multiple strikes before flying apart, sometimes sliding past each other while other times rebounding off of one another. They glided over and over, forcing Kaminari to adjust to his new power level and strike while defending himself. The man smiled as Kaminari pushed himself, landing legs first against a tree. Yes, excellent Kaminari. The monster grinned as it bolted off of the tree, spinning through the air before crashing into Kaminari. Kaminari pushed back against the blow then slid out from under it, striking the moment the monster's attack let up. He struck air as the mystery laughed, flipping over Kaminari's attack and going back to back with him. They both only tensed for a moment, taking one last deep breath before Boss wheeled around to face each other one last time. They stepped forward and spun, putting their entire bodies into the attack and crashing into each other, slamming sword against sword. Crack. BRRRRRRING tilde. Ring tilde. They both stared at each other for a moment longer, then glanced down at the shattered wooden training swords. Midoriya's had completely snapped in half from the force of his attacks while Kaminari's had a few sections still attached, his training sword now more resembling a whip as it lazily flopped about. PFFT. Kaminari broke the silence, snickering as he spun the sword over his head. Look at me go, sensei. Betcha weren't ready for this. Hey, I was not, Kaminari. Midoriya removed his helmet and folded the back section back up, then put the black blob onto his belt again underneath his coat. He broke stance as he moved away to pick up the other half of his training sword. You once again managed to surpass my expectations. Thank you. No problem, sensei. Wait, why are you thanking me? I don't get it. Don't worry about it. Wraith took the practice swords, wondering if they could still train with the spare one they packed. Worst came to worse, he could just use a stick or something. Tape wouldn't be enough to fix this, they'd definitely need a new one. You did great today, probably the best of all the students today. But I didn't hit you once and you hit me twice. I did way better last time we fought for real. Kaminari was looking down, but Wraith was not having 1 second of that. Did you? Kaminari, can you keep going? If you need to, could you keep fighting? Kaminari blinked, looked down at his legs, then spoke. Yeah, I could keep going, yes sir. I can keep up. Do you remember the last time we fought seriously what happened? Kaminari flinched at the less than positive memory of his legs being broken. The pain had been dulled at the time by him immediately falling unconscious, but it was the pain that knocked him out. He just didn't have to feel it for long. You didn't injure yourself and have come much further than last time, and have improved a lot. Heroes don't beat villains, Kaminari. Heroes don't rescue people. Heroes make people safe however they can. Midoriya adjusted his grip on all the equipment then locked eyes with Kaminari. It doesn't matter what type of hero you are or will become, your job is to make the world a better and safer place. And you can't really do that when you're the one endangering it, can you? That makes sense. But sir, I've got a question. Isn't beating villains a way to make it safe? How did me failing to hit you make anything safer? Great question. Where to start? Got it, Mina. Wraith stood up and walked over to a tree with severe but strange burns on this. If you had a good nose you could still smell the acid, and that was from forever ago. Wraith tapped the tree to draw Kaminari's eyes. See this damage? This could either be a person or property, and either way, it's not good. Property isn't as important as a person, but there are probably dozens of damaged trees like this. Quote. Oh, one of us did that. Kaminari figured out the detail that Ronin skipped over and quickly ran through the list. Too small for Bakugo so. Mina or Monoma? Wraith entirely forgot about that pretentious prick copying Mina. Maybe this was from Monoma instead, when he started firing the acid everywhere like an American with a gun. Either way, the point still stands. Ah, see this tree? Now Wraith tapped a tree that he'd been thrown straight through. You could see the trail where the branches and trunks broke against his back. This one was Sato, this many trees broken could have been a lot of walls demolished. If you break too much it becomes a safety hazard, and that goes against the point of heroes. Oh, I get it. Like Bakugo when he blew up everything. Kaminari got it again and used the easy example that Midoriya had been avoiding since it was so easy he could let Kaminari say it right now and he'd feel like he added to the conversation, boosting his confidence while pulling him into the flow. Exactly like Bakugo, a good observation. I could list every student, but I'll just cut it short and say that you did the least damage to the surroundings while staying up the longest. One of the times Kaminari had hit wouldn't have been lethal, but Kaminari called it a hit and they stopped. He did the least damage to the surroundings and definitely would have done the best out of all the students. For damage, the others who did practically no damage were Zero and Kirishima. Zero made a mess, which wasn't as bad as destroying things by a long shot, but he didn't really do that good overall. He went down several times and, like most of the students, only reacted to what Midoriya did, never taking charge of the situation and, in theory, letting the villain do whatever they waited instead of being contained. The exception to that was Kirishima, but in Wraith's opinion, everyone did better than Kirishima right until the end. Kirishima kept charging in a straight line and throwing random punches. Always. Guns. He'd charge them. Sword. He charged it. Unarmed combat. You better fucking believe he charged in while flailing his arms around. This was, needless to say, a terrible fighting style. At least he improved his style by the end and could at least maintain a guard. At the start, he had the same problem as Zero of being unable to contain the villain, but he didn't even react to what his opponent was doing. A real villain would only lose to him if they anchored themselves to the floor and tried to exchange fists with a brick head. But at least he was starting to admit he had questions. That way they could tackle these problems together. But that was later and this was now. He had stared into the distance for long enough. If he kept this up he was going to start having flashbacks and monologues about vague concepts. Midoriya tossed one of the broken swords into the air as he walked out of the forest, smiling all the while. You did a great job, Kaminari. Just because you weren't flashy doesn't mean you weren't effective. Quote. Like a gun. You compared a gun to a bomb, and you said something similar. Kaminari rubbed his chin as he thought back. How did this guy remember so many random quotes, but UA's notes said he couldn't even remember when they did and didn't have homework. Probably because of interest or something, like he was better at remembering things he liked. Focus. The bullet focuses a little and makes a lot. Kaminari shouted it would suddenly, then laughed. Got it. Well, I'm glad you listened to my ramblings. Better than a certain idiot did, anyways. What did Maruko gain from training with them? A punching bag. She nearly snapped both their necks in a training fight, for God's sake. And she wanted to do it again. Seriously, how stupid did she think he was? Course I do, you're my teacher. Kaminari lightly punched him in the shoulder as he laughed, then crossed his arms behind his head, throwing one last glance Midoriya's way. Don't tell Aizawa I said that. My lips are sealed. Great. Hey, I wanna use that lightning legs thing again. Wanna race back? Lightning legs. Well, that name's not a solid pick. Kaminari rubbed his head and looked up to the sky, musing more to himself than to Midoriya. I'm still trying to pick some good names. Like my hero name. I don't really. Hey. Kaminari refocused as Midoriya sprinted for the tree line, leaving him in the dust after distracting him. No fair. Cheating. You didn't say I couldn't. I know, cause I was gonna do that. Sensei tilde. Chapter and notes. Yamate Yagin Yu-Gi-Oh! We're done with the flash fights that took way too long because. Well, I keep saying I'm lazy but that's not a great excuse, so I'll just stop trying to comment on my release schedule and move on. As for stuff that happens in this chapter, we at least got one segment of a real fight. I don't count Kirishima as a real fight. I love the guy, but seriously, he needs to learn how to punch. Or how to block. Or you get the idea, I'll stop and move on. Again. I'm enjoying including small snippets of Aizawa and Ragdoll so we can get used to them before they do anything really important, like their conversation next chapter. Also the stuff I say about Ragdoll's quirk is entirely made up. I have no idea how Ragdoll's quirk, search, really works because it makes no sense. Let me ramble for a sec. Search Saki. Tomoko's quirk allowed her to observe and monitor up to 100 people at a time, including their location and weak points, tilde. Why in the flying fuck does finding people's location have anything to do with their weak points? Seriously, it seems like there were two quirks slapped together very badly with no merging at all. I get that people in Hero Aka have quirks like this, except they don't. The closest I can think of to this is Todoroki's half hot half cold, which seems like two separate quirks in one body. However, they both manifest in the exact same way and are the same type of quirk, elemental emitter types with large outputs that seem to use an external fuel source since Todoroki doesn't seem to get fatigued by his ice, only frostbitten. For my 2 cents, Horichoi planned to have unfortunate times happen to Ragdoll and wanted AFO to steal a weakness sense quirk. He wanted to take that away from a hero, but it was so overpowered he gave it to a hero who'd never use it to its full potential, a rescue